Good afternoon and welcome back to the final instalment of round 9 of the FOSROC Super 6 Championship, and this game is brought to you live from Goldenacre as Heriot welcome the Southern Knights. The home side will be looking to do the double over the visitors after defeating them 21 points to 31 on the road a few weeks ago under the lights on a Friday night at the Greenyards. The game earlier this afternoon also has huge significance on the final standings in the Championship, as it means that Heriots can catch the Boroughmuir Bears for that all-important third place going into the final weekend. And obviously with the results that have gone so far, my commentating partner this afternoon is Bruce Millar. Obviously you're alongside me for the Boroughmuir Bears game, and that's going to have huge significance on the way this fixture is going to pan out.
Yes, although we know who the top two teams are, the Watsonians and the Ayrshire Bulls, and we know they are going to have home advantage in the playoffs. We know that both Heriot Rugby and the Boroughmuir Bears are going to be their opponents. What we don't know is who will play who. And next week it's fascinating because Boroughmuir Bears play the Ayrshire Bulls and Watsonians play Heriots. We could end up with a repeat of that the following week in the playoffs, or they could be the switch of opponents, and we won't really know that, I don't suppose, at close of play today.
Yeah, still a lot of exciting fixtures to come up in the next round, the final round of the regular championship. And as you can see there, Heriot's just sitting in fourth on 16 points, 6 points behind the Boroughmuir Bears. And obviously, after the culmination of next weekend's fixtures, it will be the first position team to play the fourth position team, and the top team will have home advantage, and then second will play third before the final the following Sunday at the Dam Health Stadium. So still a lot to play for, and obviously the Southern Knights as well, they've got quite a lot to play for in terms of pride. The pressure is off them, but it'll give us a little opportunity to look at the home side. And head coach Finn Gillis has been boosted with the return of a few familiar faces, and also the addition of some professional experience to help build some momentum against their what we would call weary opponents. Murdo McAndrew retains the number 9 shirt this weekend, and he'll partner young fly half Dan King, who makes his first start in this position due to the absence of Bruce Houston. There's experience in abundance in the outside backs as Edinburgh players Hutchison and Blaine start at inside centre and winger respectively, and Matt Davidson will be hoping to capitalise on their power and feed off the pace to exhibit the pace that has made him a regular fixture in the Scotland Sevens team. In the forwards there's changes as players look to get some sharpness ahead of the playoffs, and McLaren and Young get the start in the front row, with a very familiar second row pairing of Hastie and Sadak, while in the back row young impressive Heriots Blues player Sam Wallace makes his first start alongside the very impressive duo of Leishman and Wilson. The visitors have got a few selection headaches of their own due to injury in what's been an arduous season in Super 6 for the New Look Knights. A new centre partnership of McGee and Pickles will be hoping to gel and feed off the experience of Jaco van der Vault at fly half. The released Edinburgh Pro will certainly be asking a lot of both back threes, and will be expecting Clark, Cross and Douglas to have their spikes on as they look to orchestrate where the game is played with his boot. In the forwards, recently signed Edinburgh prop Nick Otterakpak's down at tight head. He will be alongside Deans, and also the captain for this afternoon's fixture, Morris, who takes the leadership duties from Anderson and Rennick, who dropped to the bench. Sam Derrick is impressed in his step up from National 1 Rugby with Melrose, and he'll be partnering a couple of Knights who have little care for the well-being with ball in hand as Nelson and Brown make up the back row. Obviously Bruce Ruthven, the head coach for the Southern Knights, has been saying in the press that they've shown that they can mix it with the teams at the top of the table, but results don't really illustrate that for the Southern Knights.
Yes, it's hard to agree with them. I have to say they haven't really shown that they can compete with them. They have got better as the season's gone on, but they just lack accuracy. You and I watched the reverse fixture here down at the Greenyards, could only have been 3 weeks ago, I think, in round 6, and they'll still be wondering how on earth they lost that. I think there was a 10 points difference between the teams, but they couldn't hit their line-outs, was one of their big issues, and take advantage of situations they got themselves into. I still say they were probably the best team, and it's too late now. Had they won that, it would have given them a real crack at fourth place, because of this game they've got the Stirling Wolves next weekend. It's too late for them to worry about that, and now they're really just trying to play for pride, see if they can win their last 2 games.
Yeah, they've obviously got an interesting fixture in the last weekend with the Stirling Wolves. It matters little in the context of the championship in terms of who's going to be the Super 6 champions this year, but Heriot's off the back of the Boroughmuir Bears result. You know, obviously this is a kind of different game, and we spoke at the end of the previous fixture about how important it is for positions, but you know, there's not an easy position for the Boroughmuir Bears or Heriots to sit in, and Is it more about the performance now for Heriot, or is it securing that third place?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they don't know who is. I mean, you could go into all sorts of analysis about who they would prefer to play. Are Watsonians marginally the better team than the Ayrshire Bulls? They've shown that they probably are over the course of the season. But actually, with the two Edinburgh teams, Boroughmuir or Heriots, would they rather go to their near neighbours Watsonians in a semi-final rather than going all the way down to Millbrae? And I suspect they would. So in that respect, Heriots are maybe quite happy in fourth place. I've got no doubt they won't go out to try and stay in fourth place. They'll go out and try and win this, and they'll try and win next week. But from that perspective, and the best opportunity to win in a playoff semi-final, it might be that they stay in fourth place and face Watsonians.
It's going to be an interesting weekend next weekend as the regular championship comes to an end, and certainly those two fixtures where the top four teams all meet ahead of the playoffs is going to have a huge say in terms of confidence and momentum. But you've just seen a player, Daniel Sudden, on the sideline speaking to Southern Knights general manager Kieran Cooney, and that's certainly a player that they miss. But the Southern Knights have been really unfortunate with injury, the likes of Harry Borthwick missing. He was a monumental character for them. He got injured in their only victory that they've had so far away to the Stirling Wolves. And it's a new look Knights team. It's been really difficult over the sprint and over the championship. They've got so many new faces, but it's perhaps just a matter of just this championship's done now. They can start focusing on next season.
I think so, yes, and we've touched on it earlier today. We've touched on it for the last 9 weeks. Obviously, everybody wants to win every week, but it's also a development vehicle for our young players, and so every week is an opportunity for them. They're in the shop window, a chance for them to get better, play with and against some of the pros that we're seeing released from Edinburgh Rugby and Glasgow Warriors. But you think back a year ago, Southern Knights played in the final. They topped the table after the regulation games. They were beaten at the Greenyards by the Ayrshire Bulls and that, but they were the best team over the piece, and then they really struggled in the sprint series early in the season. They've never quite found their form yet, but as I say, there are signs of them getting better, and all they can do is try in these next two games to improve further and look forward to hopefully another sprint series next spring. Yeah,
they've definitely played a little bit better towards the tail end of this campaign, but it's not came up much. As you can see, Aidan Cross, one of probably the finds for the Southern Knights this season, just taking his place with his yellow boots on the wing. He was a player that was playing National 1 Rugby for Melrose only last year. He's made the step up to the Knights and he's been scoring tries, so he's certainly been a good find, and as has this man, Rudy Leishman. He's been a good talisman for Heriots, returning to the side this afternoon to lead the team in what is a very abrasive back row, likes of Ian Wilson packing down at number 8, and Sam Wallace, who was voted the Heriots Nail of the Month. So he was their best player, getting his first start in the back row. And it's going to be Heriots to kick off this game, and that man with number 6 in his back, Leishman, is a very important player. He helps blend the forwards and the backs together, and Ian Kenny, he'll certainly get his pace up this afternoon, because both these teams like to throw the ball about.
TV's all good, yeah? Excellent. Ready? Harry? Rory?
So Ian Kenny gets the game underway, and it's kicked high into the sky, and it's straight onto a Heriot side. It's been misjudged in the air from Jamie Campbell, who just couldn't clutch that ball, and now it's getting a little bit messy on the floor, but came back to the Southern Knights. But Rudy Brown being penalised, and we've spoken about it before. It's going to be an interesting decision here, but we've spoken about it before, how important it is off the kickoff to just set the ball, and straight away, 30 seconds into the game, the Southern Knights have conceded territory and possession.
And it's not an easy skill, but it goes back to what we said at the start, that the Southern Knights maybe just at times lack a little bit of accuracy, and that should be taken by Jamie Campbell. If we get another look at it, we'll see whether it was, maybe he didn't get the lift that he was expecting, but we're not even a minute into the game and you're handing Heriots a chance 5 metres from your try line. Elliot Young gets his first opportunity to throw into the line out. He got a try in the narrow defeat against Boroughmuir Bears, but he's overthrown that one to Wallace Nelson, who's lurking at the tail of the line out. He tries to throw it back to some supporting players, but it's came back on the Heriot side. Now McAndrew
He finds McLaren for his first opportunity to carry this afternoon. Now to King, who's passed behind his supporting players in midfield, but it still comes back on a Heriot side. And Jack Blaine has been tasked with the chance to try and sweep the ball up, but it has come back on a Southern Knights side, and Van de Vault gets the ball wide into open space where Aidan crosses there. Crawford finding Nelson.
Roll 2.
And Nelson looking to try and
The ball's
be
available.
very industrious in this game and offer himself up for a lot of carries as Crawford now. And the ball's at the back to Van de Vault, who tries to spill the ball wide. It's came to Rudy Brown and now to the speedster Finn Douglas, who kicks forward and is looking to try and make this a foot race if the ball bounces in. But it's been well covered there by the Heriot's fullback Rory Steele, and he just charges into touch.
Well, the one thing we maybe didn't say at the start was because the Southern Knights, they know they're going to finish bottom 2, won't play in the playoffs, they can come here and just throw the ball about with a bit of abandon, and early signs that they might well do that with Jacko van der Vault in there. For the long ball out to Finn Douglas, who is involved in the sprinting scene as well, and did well to keep that ball in play, but just bounced into touch. Chance from the line out though.
Finn Douglas looks to be lurking about with a little injury, but it's came to another scrappy line out, and it's the hooker Young who puts in a great offload to a supporting player who just barges the wanting tackler Crawford out the road as McAndrew looks to keep the tempo in this ball. Hutchison, and he finds Davidson, who finds Steele, who's got Pecure over in that wing, but it's great covering defence from Cross, and the ball almost stayed alive, but it's been knocked on by Heriots. And again, both teams showing that they want to try and throw this ball about. It's good conditions for it, and they've certainly got the personnel to do that.
Scrum.
We're 3 minutes in, I think we're going to have a lively game.
It'll be a bit different to the first half of the previous game anyway, because certainly both sides early on are looking to try and chuck the pill about. But that was a great run from Ewan McLaren, who got a great offload from the hooker. He's packing down alongside Elliot Young.
Well, you can see there in the middle of your shot, the man he ran over, standing with the ball in his hands, Douglas Crawford, and you can see the mismatch between the number 3 jersey and the number 9 jersey there. It's no wonder he went right over the top of him, but I think Douglas Crawford will be looking for one of his forwards to make that tackle next time. Yeah, that was a catch-weight battle, that one, I think, between McLaren and Crawford. Crawford now safely got the ball in his hand.
Bind. Set.
The first chance to see both scrums packed down together, and it's relatively stable at the start. You can see the front row's just going down, but it's been swept up there by Rudy Brown. He manages to get the ball from the scrum safely, and the Southern Knights now looking to try and secure this ball. And Crawford digging about, looking for some protection from his forwards. He's got Edinburgh pro Nick Otterak there, recently signed, Scotland international. And it's been cleared downfield from Crawford. He's not made a lot of territory on that, and it's going to be a throw into the line out for Heriots.
That's something else we saw in the last game. We spoke about the quality of the kicking. The first half didn't have a huge amount of excitement in it, but the kicking from both 10s in particular, but 9s, getting some great distance where it wasn't the best of kicks there by Douglas Crawford, and just hands Heriots possession.
Leishman lobbed up in the line out, and he gathers that ball cleanly, and Young is looking to try and get that ball back, but is under the arm of Sam Wallace. McAndrew now opening up the ball, giving it to his teammates there as Steele is tasked with clutching that ball from the sky, because it was an ambitious pass from Heriots, looking to try and stretch this park, but McAndrew's noticed a bit of space in backfield, and it's been well fielded there and kicked back down the throats of Heriots. And Jack Blaine is the player there, and he's certainly got a lot of pace and power. Been well marshalled there by Nick Otterak and the Southern Knights defence, who take play up towards the halfway and putting this Heriots team under pressure, but looking a bit dislodged in defence there. Now Heriots look to try and break free through Pecure. He's got Ian Wilson in support, who's charging down the tram lines now, looking to try and bundle over Kieran Douglas. And Elliot Young now charging his way, pumping his legs closer to the line as Heriots, but as close as they've ever been in this opening 5 minutes to getting the first score of this game. He's going to come back on the Heriot side as Ian Wilson dives over. Has he got over the line? The referee Ian Kenny having a good look to see if he's managed to get over, and I think he's awarded the try there for Ian Wilson. It's instinctive from the number 8. He noticed a little gap in the defence and he squeezes over for a score. The referee Ian Kenny took a lot of time to make his decision, but after 5 minutes It's the opening score for Heriot's, and it all came from the good work in open field from the Heriot's backs, who managed to get Ian Wilson in some space down that stand side. He managed to ride the tackle, set up the platform, and eventually he benefited in the end because he squeezed over the line.
And if we go a little bit further back, it came from the Heriot's kick. Southern Knights sent it long, and Jack Blaine carried it, got tackled in the midfield. But from that point, the Southern Knights never really reorganised their defence properly. They were very narrow. Heriot's recognised that there was space down the stand side touchline, got the ball there quickly, and Ian Wilson, I think it was that with ball in hand, made great ground to get them into the 22. And then another phase or two later, it's that same man who goes over for the opening try.
Ian Wilson is he scored many a try from that distance. It's usually crouched quite comfortably behind a maul, but he obviously showed an instinct on that occasion to sniff out the try line. And now Dan King, his first attempt at the extras, just drifts in front and didn't have the distance and certainly didn't have the angle either, so it remains here after 7 minutes. It's Heriot's 5 and Southern Knights 0.
Yeah, well, a lively start for both sides. You can see how they want to play. And it was just that disorganisation in that Southern Knights defensive line from the kick that's cost them dearly there.
A good kickoff from Van de Volt, finds Leishman, but he's managed to pick the ball out, and you can see there that Patrick Anderson has replaced Finn Douglas, who got injured in his only attack of the game after a couple of minutes as he kicked downfield. So the Southern Knights being forced into an early replacement. A pretty good one at that as well. I think if they were to bring a player on, I think Patrick Anderson is quite an able replacement for them.
He's a superb player, Patrick Anderson. I'm biased because he's from about a mile away from me, but he really is, and very versatile. Played outside centre in the last game between these two, on in the wing now. He suffered from injuries this season as well, but it's a shame to lose Finn Douglas because we'd like to have seen his speed in open play. He's got a wonderful try at Megatland, in fact, from his own half, I think from his own 10 metre line. Perhaps a recurrence of the injury he had a couple of weeks ago.
Good accurate line out from the Southern Knights, and it's ended up in the hands of Crawford eventually as Van de Volt looks to find a runner. He's got Nelson there who's carried yet again. And Van de Volt now taking the ball to the line, looking to try and squeeze in between this Heriot's defence, but he's been wrapped up well there. But the tempo is still in this phase as Crawford gets the ball quickly away from the breakdown, as he tends to look to try and inject some pace into this attack. And yet again he filters himself round as the Southern Knights players are recycling themselves well in the open play to really try and test this Heriot's defence. Now Anderson getting the ball in hand for the first time. He's managed to find a teammate, and now the forwards are tasked yet again with a carry, and it's Robbie Deans. So Southern Knights' first real venture into the Heriot's half as Otterak now charges forward and manages to offload out the tackle as well, and the gaps are now starting to open up for the Southern Knights if they can shift the point of contact. There's been a pick straight through the middle there from Wallace Nelson. And now Van de Volt, he's found McGee, who looks to just run straight into Davidson. He's done well to secure that ball, and Crawford's got some runners coming round the corner, but perhaps getting a little bit flat. And Crawford again finds McGee. McGee's got some players outside him, just opts not to use them on this occasion. The Southern Knights now having to play a little bit more patient rugby, and just not able to get that ball back as the referee calls for the penalty. And Heriot's defending well there across the pitch and also at the breakdown.
And good build-up play by the Southern Knights. They came all the way back from the line out, just an 11 play. They went out and hit up in the midfield and then came back towards the line out, and from there was immediately space away in the far side, and some of the gaps in that Heriot's defence probably bigger than the coaches would have liked. And I thought if the Knights had gone wide right a phase or so earlier, they might well have been able to take advantage, but they went through phases, worked their way towards that try line, and Heriot's perhaps a little bit lucky to survive.
The gaps came in the defence when the structure kind of left the game, when it got a little bit more open. That's when the gaps started to open up for the Southern Knights, just not able to capitalise. And again, accuracy at the line out for Heriot's as Ian Wilson now charges out of his own 22 and sets up a good platform for Dan King to kick downfield. He's made a better connection with this one. His kick to touch from the penalty didn't make a lot of ground, but Kieran Clark, a relative pedestrian pace, is back to sweep up that ball straight down the throat of Dan King. Equally as comfortable at fullback, the 10, getting his first start at fly half. And the experienced Rory Steele now noticing some space and kicks downfield.
Outside, stay 13.
The Southern Knights returning the ball straight back to
Always
Heriot.
inside, guys. He's always inside.
Back inside the Heriot's 22 now, and it's a game of aerial ping pong between the two teams as they look to try and sneak a few yards. And now Jaco van der Walt puts the ball high into this low sun here at Goldenacre, and it's been allowed to bounce by Dan King, but has been swept up well. Now Rory Steele looks to just put his foot in the gas and attack from deep inside his own half. He's been marshalled well there by Otterak. And also Sam Derrick was there for company, and it's an error from Steele as he tried to break, and you would imagine, well, you can see there that in terms of the advantage from the kicking battle, it's went to the Southern Knights.
It very much has. I was about to say Rory Steele's been a bit of a revelation in his first involvement in Super 6 rugby this season. He's played outside centre, he's played in the wing, and finds himself at fullback today. Always very willing to have a go. Great Sevens pedigree, likes to just run with ball in hand, but we had a bit of a kicking duel before that. You wonder if he should have just banged that one off downfield as well, but the mistake, the knock on and the tackle has handed the Knights a really good attacking opportunity from the scrum.
Set!
Douglas Crawford to roll the ball in a position that the Southern Knights have lacked depth in. And Crawford has had a relatively solid season in the number 9 jersey, and now the Knights try and spark an attack and find Kieran Clark and try and put him into a gap, but Ben Pickle's not able to manipulate the defence enough. And it's going to be another put into the scrum for the Southern Knights from a knock-on from Heriot.
Patrick Anderson did really well to rescue that situation. I think it was him that went down in the loose ball there. And that had been hacked off downfield by Heriot. Could have been dangerous.
It has been a kind of a common theme in the Southern Knights season that they do have phases in games where they look cohesive and they go through structure, but times these little errors, similar to Stirling Wolves, these little errors creep into their game. Obviously they're just a little bit miscommunication in midfield between McGee and Pickles, getting a little bit flat, but Van der Walt, he finds Pickles looking to try and go round the outside. He's been wrapped up well in defence there by Heriot yet again. Jack Blaine making the tackle, but it has come back on a Knight's side. The support getting there quickly. Now Wallace Nelson. And the most carries of a Southern Knights player so far in this game. He's very energetic, always looking for work, a tireless back row player. And now Van der Walt finds Pickles again. The gaps in defence just not there for the Southern Knights at the moment, as Wallace Nelson yet again gets round the corner to try and steal some yards for the Southern Knights, but there's none there. As Jamie Campbell now goes in pretty tall, but he's managed to get the ball back on their side, and Van der Walt finds some space from the on-rushing winger, but I think he's put a little bit too much on that kick, and it's just trundled over the goal line. But I think Van der Walt just noticing that play was getting a little bit stale, and he's just looking to try and steal some territory. Yeah,
an interesting option. We'll find out in a second if it's worked or not. I mean, the goal line dropout, so that the Knights will get possession back, but I'd like to see them just keep a hold of that ball and keep going through phases, because we said in the previous play a couple of minutes ago, as they went through 6, 7, 8 phases, you could start to see the gaps appearing in that Heriot's defence. So for me, they're better just keeping a hold of the ball. There's no real reason to kick there.
But if you're behind him, it's okay.
It's interesting. So this game so far, we've seen obviously the new centre pair and McGee and Pickles, and a lot of the other squads. There's been a lot of rotation. How important is it to have a consistent team in these partnerships? Because like you look in the second row of Heriot, Hastie and Sadak have been pretty much mainstays. And they know how each other plays so well, and you can start to see the disjointedness of a new fly half playing with a new centre pair, and it just takes a while to get off the bit, doesn't it?
Well, if anybody was watching the previous game, we spoke about it. It was you that made the point that Watsonian's first half they were quite ordinary with some real big name players in their team, and we put it down to the fact that they just didn't have that understanding with each other, the combinations, and yeah, you just build them over a season where you understand what the player beside you is going to do, Whether he's going to drop off a little pass, whether he's going to put boot to ball.
That could perhaps point to one of the reasons why the Knights haven't been able to get out of second gear this season, but certainly a player who dropped a gear there was big Rudy Brown, who just ducked down and looked to just take it up the guts of Heriot. And Vandervolt changing the point of attack, finds McGee. He's now got Sam Derrick lurking about in the wing, another player who's been very impressive for the Knights in what has been a bit of a damp squib of a campaign. Crawford finds Vandervolt. He's got Autorak, who looks to try and burst through the Heriot's defence, but it's been closed again pretty quickly. And there's a fight on the floor from Sam Wallace, who's making his first start for the Super 6 side. Aidan Cross lurking in behind the breakdown, looking to try and benefit off some tired runners. Now Harry Morris, the replacement hooker, used to play a lot in the back row, being converted into a hooker. And Vandervolt looking to try and grasp that ball. It's just a little bit too low for the fly half to try and get. Now Heriots have the ball in hand and kick downfield. And Pickles is keeping a keen eye on this one as it gracefully bubbles up into his hand. And he's looking to try and split the defence with his pace yet again. And he manages to beat 3 tackles, but he's been met with a couple of stern challenges in midfield as McLaren done well on the floor to isolate the outside centre, and he wins the penalty.
Pickles did so well from the return to carry the ball back, went through 3 or 4 tackles, but he has to work harder on the ground than that. He's essentially flopped at the feet of McLaren, and he's never moved. He's got to work, he's got to fold in the middle and get himself worked back towards his own team there, just even to move the ball so that McLaren can't just put hands straight on that. So that was the only disappointment from that. But going back to before the kick, the Knights' ruck speed is superb. Some of them can only be about a second, and Crawford is working so hard to get there and clear the breakdown, and that's putting the Heriots' defence under an awful lot of pressure. The Knights were almost unplayable last week against Watsonians for a spell. They were offloading, they were taking quick taps from the penalties, and Watsonians really struggled to cope, and the Knights got to within, I think, 5 points of them at the midway point of the second half, and the Watsonians just lifted it a gear. But they do have it within them, so perhaps that is what they were referring to when they were saying that they've shown that they can compete with the big boys. They've certainly not shown it over the course of a whole game, because of the results tell a story. But in patches, they can, and we're seeing little glimpses of it here. I'm hoping that Pickles, he looks like he's okay. They've already lost a player in Finn Douglas. They wouldn't want to lose another of their players from their starting back division.
Yeah, Ben Pickle, who's been a bit of a find for the Knights from previously playing for Selkirk in the Premiership. He shone for the Suitors in the Premiership campaign that he had, and he's trying to stab at Super 6. He has been a little bit plagued by injury throughout this campaign. I just wonder whether this is going to result in a replacement again. He does look a bit dejected, so
That's an absolute fair comment. Cheers.
He's not moving too quickly to join the teammates again.
No, he's got that look about him that he knows he's going off. He is. That's a shame.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a head knock that he's going off for an assessment. But in the backs, the Southern Knights only have David Colvin and Harris Rutherford left.
I wonder if that's why he didn't move an awful lot. I was criticising him for perhaps his ball presentation should have been better. He was maybe suffering the effects of the tackle and couldn't move. He seemed to be sitting up, so I thought it was a leg injury, but so we may well see him back, but either way, yes, 2 changes in the back line in the first 16 minutes.
I think I just seen the player come on. I think David Colvin is going to be the replacement, who's been playing a lot of fullback for the Knights and drops to the bench for this fixture, but he's another player who's got an early introduction into this game. As Young yet again finds Leishman, almost attracting like magnets, that ball from Young to Leishman, but Blaine working hard off his wing, and he manages just to barge over the first player there, McGee. And there's a slight difference in pace from the breakdown as Heriots look for a more pragmatic approach to this, as McAndrew, who spent a lot of time at the Green Yards, is now playing against a team that he's spent a lot of successful years with, as Hutchison finds Scott on the run in an acute angle, but he's been driven back by a mixture of Sam Derrick and Wallace Nelson. Now into the hands of Davidson. who dances off his right foot and back in field, looking to try and find some space. But the Southern Knights defence is an area that has improved vastly over the duration of this campaign. The defensive line looking to rush up there through Van der Vault, just no players with him. As Pecure, another player who spent a bit of time at the Green Yards, now in Heriot's colours, takes play up over the 10 metre line. And Heriot's are a team that are quite comfortable to go through the phases, but they've got into a bit of trouble there, and that's good work on the floor from the Southern Knights players, namely Rudy Brown and Harry Morris.
Yeah, Heriot's going through phases, but not really troubling that Southern Knights defence. You know, Murdo McAndrew's got such a nice long pass in him. It was from the line out. He whipped the pass right out into the midfield, and they played from there. But I'd like to see Dan King a bit more connected to his pod of three forwards in front of him. I think it's really clear that that pod is going to carry, so the Knights defence are not having to worry about King. He's just sort of standing there letting them carry, and then he'll move out to be first receiver in the next phase. And I think if he was more connected to that pod moving with them, it might just ask questions of some of those Southern Knights defenders.
Southern Knights successful from the line out. Jimmy Campbell is the player who was the target at that line out there, and we've got a free ball to play with now. The Knights as Van der Vault puts boot to ball, a right-footed kick cross field. This one for Kieran Clark to try and chase, but it's going to come back for the penalty. And I think back to your point about Dan King, that man on your screen is Jack Blaine, the released Edinburgh winger. But Dan King, he's obviously making his first start at 10. He's a completely different 10 to Bruce Houston, who's been an absolute revelation for Harriet's, obviously in a partnership agreement with Edinburgh. But Dan King, you know, these are the sort of games that will benefit him with that sort of feedback as well. You know, those sort of learning moments in games.
Yes, and he's got a great coach in Stuart Edwards who can give him that feedback. Houston a big miss for them, because in terms of game management and his kicking, there are few better players in Super 6 rugby.
An attacking line out for Morris to throw into it, and again he finds Campbell and they go straight off the maul and try and run round the corner, and again that hunched over run from Rudy Brown. Now Wallace Nelson looking to try and pick round the fringes as the Southern Knights players have to recycle themselves. Now the man that threw into the line out, Morris, the captain for this afternoon, looks to try and have a little stab of it now. The Heriot's defence still holding strong as Wallace Nelson has another go, and the pace of this Southern Knights attack is increasing, and they're looking to try and go the same way and task this Heriot's defence to get round the corner. Now shifting the point of contact out a bit wider, and eventually they get over the line, and it's a reply score, and it is Nick Otterak who's getting the pats on the back. The big prop gets over the whitewash after some really, really good work from the line out, patient build up from the forwards, and that is a textbook forwards try.
And everybody does it. You know, your game plan changes slightly when you get that close to the line. The Knights have been looking to play quickly, but when you get there, you either just pick and go, or you pass it one pass and carry, and as you touched on in commentary, you just force the defence to keep coming round the corner, and at some point either a gap appears or you tighten up the defence so much that you can throw the ball wide. And what was that, 6 or 7 phases, and Heriot's just run out of players.
It was good to see the consistency of that play with the free ball as well. They continued to do what was working for them.
Yes, because there's a temptation at that point to try and do, you know, something miraculous, and there's no need, as they just showed.
Jaco van der Vault has added the extras, so it is going to be Southern Knights who are leading in this game after almost 22 minutes, and it's certainly a patient build-up, and as Bruce alluded to, you're asking the defence to get round the corner and work really, really hard to cover the space. And it's a really well worked try from the Knights, and straight from the kick-off the Knights make a better job of this one as Campbell finds a little bit of space in front of him and just trips over his own momentum on his own feet. Crawford kicking downfield. It's been well gathered by Rory Steele, who just plucks out the sky, manages to evade the challenge from Clark. He's been wrapped up well. Steele, as you say, is a very experienced fullback, playing a lot of time with Watsonians and also hailing from Dumfries, and that's a huge hit in midfield as Ewan McLaren looked to try and take play forward, and McAndrew's now running a bit of bother as Rudy Brown has just wrapped up the scrum half, but that's excellent work from the scrum half. I don't know how he's managed to get the ball out of that maul. but he's managed to find probably the only gap in between the players that were there. And Heriot's yet to come again. Set up play, bang on centre field. Steele acts as first receiver. Tries to get the ball wide into the open channels for Heriot's to try and exploit, but again the Southern Knights defence has been, apart from the opening try, it's been pretty impressive for the 23 minutes of this game. I would imagine the inclusion of Alan Tate and the coaching staff might have something to do with that. And now Van de Val back in field, looking to try and find some space. And I think he's perhaps kicked that out in the full. And you heard the referee saying there that the 50-22 was on, but the fly half just not able to find touch with the bouncing ball. It's kicked out in the full, and the Southern Knights concede quite a bit of territory.
It's a shame that the Southern Knights defence not rewarded for all their hard work, because they're getting off the line very fast. They're occasionally coming out and flying out the line, making spot tackles, but their timing, their decision making is good round that. They force Heriot's to kick, but then the return kick just not quite accurate enough.
Elliot Young, he's had one boo-boo from the line out, but he's been pretty accurate other than that, and he's accurate yet again. And McAndrew peeling round the maul. It's eventually fed to King into the hands of Davidson, but it's just not able to find a Heriot's hand as the scrappy ball has been swept up by Heriot's. And Jack Blaine, now working off his wing, has just met with Van de Val. And Wallace Nelson looking to try and work hard through the ruck, but that's been swept up really well by Murdo McAndrew at the base of that ruck. Just able to keep the ball alive as McLaren carries yet again. McAndrew getting the ball to King. He's found Hutchison. Hutchison goes alone. He dips the shoulder and tries to find the gap in the Southern Knights defence, but nothing doing this time. Now Davidson finds Young, the hooker. He's not carried too much in this game so far. And I think Patrick Anderson perhaps guilty of going off his feet. In the firm Irish accent of Ian Kenny, he's telling the Southern Knights that they were definitely off their feet, and Heriot's get the penalty.
Yeah, he sounded almost exasperated. He was being questioned by the Southern Knights there, and yeah, he says, "You're clearly off your feet," and they were clearly off their feet. I think it was Patrick Anderson, maybe just a little bit over-eager, but he's been good since he came on, introduced to the game earlier than the Knights would have intended, but he's such a good defender.
It's hard to argue against.
Yeah, he's a very good player. Just he spent a bit of time training with Edinburgh, just not able to push on and
stay back, guys,
make that step up. But Heriot's now in what is a dangerous position. The Heriot's players love to lurk around these areas with a driving maul, and they've got a bit of momentum in this one. The familiar figure of Ian Wilson, the driver at the back of the maul. He's been well protected, but the penalties come in and they get closer and closer to that line, but it's eventually gone to ground. Now Murdo McAndrew trying to squirm away from the challenges round the side of the maul there. He's been dragged down, and Heriot's looking to try and get over the line through Rory Leishman, and I think he's just got enough pressure down on that ball, and the referee has awarded the try, and it is the captain, Rory Leishman, who gets the score.
And you didn't, so it's a penalty against you. You did hear me because you looked at me after I said.
I'm just having a listen to the referee's explanation there. It's a big hit on McAndrew as he tried to get over, but good pick and go there by Rory Leishman, the captain. He's athletic, he's powerful, and was able to drive himself over. But you've still got to go back to that penalty. The Southern Knights defence has been generally pretty solid. Having said that, I criticised them for their first try where they got a bit narrow, but they've dealt well with most of what Heriots have thrown at them. They've forced Heriots into kicking on a couple of occasions, but they just couldn't resist going for the ball. Gave away the penalty. Heriots kicked to the corner, and as we've seen right throughout the FOSROC Super 6 Championship, when teams get into those positions and they get their line out drive set, they're very hard to stop.
The conversion attempt from Dan King just goes to the right hand side of the posts, and he'll be disappointed with that. It certainly looked like a kickable conversion, and that will do his confidence no good at all. But Heriots do get their noses back in front, 10 points to 7.
think that's a fair reflection of the first 27 minutes.
Yeah, it definitely has been. As Van de Voort kicks back downfield into the glare of the sun, but it's been gathered well by Ian Wilson. He passes back to McAndrew. He's just thrown it down the throat of David Colvin, who finds Jaco Van de Voort, who's just got the ball in hand now, not looking to kick, and goes through the first few challenges. The referee has penalised them for crossing, and this is perhaps, you know, straight from the kickoff. It's a different way to give away a penalty straight from the kickoff, but the endeavour was there from Jaco Van de Voort.
Yeah, and he very nearly went clean through. That was an important tackle for Heriot, and yeah, I just see a different. Well, we've still got play going on. I think Southern Knights have kept that one in.
Yeah, great athleticism from Aidan Cross to keep that ball in, and the Southern Knights can kick downfield. But Murdo McAndrew now looking to keep play underway, and it's Rory Steele now who's looking to chip and go it alone, and the bouncing ball is caught. And Douglas Crawford unawares, but Van de Voort is there to offer a very steady boot and kick downfield, and he's made pretty good territory with that. I don't think Heriot will be looking to try and throw this one in quickly.
No, that was a better kick. It's interesting because there's been quite a lot of kicking in the game, and rather than them being kicks that can be contested and try and regather, they've generally just been long. You can see both teams quite happy to force the opposition back where possible. And on that occasion, it looked like a decent kick from Steele, but it was more than matched by the return kick of Jaco Van der Voort.
Something I've seen a lot of the kind of tide turned in the previous game when Watsonians were using perhaps more tactical kicking to pin their opponent's back, and it's an approach that both of these sides are trying to use. As Dan King looks to get a bit of length in his kick, and it's not the nicest looking of kicks, but it's also not found touch as David Colvin just returns it downfield, and King will get another chance to try and make some territory from an acute angle. But Kieran Clark is now the Southern Knights player just underneath it. I think he had a little sniff of wondering whether he could try and just run, but he's opted to kick it into the skies, and Rory Steele has gathered it and just offloaded it back in field to Jack Blaine, who manages to stand up Crawford, but the scrum half manages just to snaffle him round the ankles. But Heriot's return with the ball in hand. Hutchison clapping his hands, demanding the ball from his scrum half, and it looks like Heriot's have always got a couple of men up on the open parts of the field, as Pecure has to act as an auxiliary scrum half, and as Young is bundled back by Harry Morris, and the player's getting a little bit flat, so it's come back on a Southern Knights side from pressure from that defence, and David Colvin kicks downfield now, and it's been juggled by Rory Steele, but he does manage to get it under control and boot it back downfield. And it's certainly testing our camera crew here at the game. And Jaco Van der Voort is opting to go it alone, manages to get the ball back this time, and Morris is acting as scrum half. He finds Otterak, who barges the wanton challenge of Josh Scott out the road. Now Crawford finding Campbell, and he looks like he's been smothered there in defence, but yet again the Southern Knights working hard in contact to get the ball back, and now his second row partner Alan Ferry is taking play over the halfway line, and Crawford having a little look about, but he's been hijacked round the fringes. Otterak now taking play up to the halfway line, but he's been stripped in contact. He's going to come back on the Heriot side as Leishman manages to get the ball away from contact. Now Pecure looking to try and offload, but it looks like that ball might bundle into touch, and it's been scrappy, and it's pretty full on from both sides, but you know, you can see the attacking endeavour from both these teams.
Yeah, it's been entertaining. The referee calling for a water break there. It's been fast paced, and just going back to the kicking, in some ways they're trying to push their opponents back, but they're also trying to break the field up. They're kicking it knowing they're probably going to get a return kick, and at some point the defence, you're going to be attacking against a broken defence, and you've got some dangerous runners out there. We've spoken about Rory Steele already, Jack Blaine, and Sam Pecure, the back three for Heriot. And so yes, although it looks like they're giving possession away, they're really trying to break the game up a little bit and find spaces to run into when they eventually get that opportunity. And likewise, Kieran Clark, Aidan Cross, and well, Finn Douglas no longer at the back now. We've got Patrick Anderson and David Colvin on there now as well, but they're more than happy to have a go. And in among that, there's some hugely physical play was at Wallace Nelson, I think, came flying out the line and made a huge tackle. I didn't see which Heriots player it was on. There was a cry of an illegal tackle because it looked like he had lifted him. The referee said no, it was absolutely fine, but they're certainly throwing their bodies into each other when they get a chance as well.
Yeah, I think the tactical kicking game is almost a game of who's blinking first to try and steal some yards. When the players put the box kicks up, it's contestable. It's a game of luck, but you have to be accurate with these longer kicks, because if you're not accurate, they can be punished quite quickly by the list of players that Bruce Millar has just listed. I would also say he's had a pretty impressive return back to Southern Knights. Harry Morris, he's looked pretty good in the front row, but that's been well gathered by McLaren at the back of the line out. He just manages to get the outstretched arm and gather it, but the loose pass has fallen into the hands of Patrick Anderson, who looks to fend the first challenge away. He's been scragged to ground, but the ball has come back on a Knights side, and you can see the hard work from the supporting players from the Knights securing that ball. They're having to work hard again to get the ball back on their side, as Crawford has spotted some space in behind Jack Blaine. He's got some pressure here as well. A little hitch kick in midfield, and he gets away from the first couple of challenges. He looks to chip and go it alone, and there's some space in there if it can pop up on his side, but I think that was Van der Vault who got that loose ball. Picure was up in the line there looking to try and intercept, but he's given away the penalty. And this is a finely poised game. It's pretty entertaining in terms of the way that both these teams are approaching it, but 10 points to 7 after 32 minutes, it's a pretty fair reflection.
Absolutely, yes. I think Heriot's probably just about worth their 3 points advantage, but yeah, two evenly matched sides, two sides here to have a go. That was a great run there by Jack Blaine, picking up the ball that was kicked through and evaded the first couple of tacklers and took play all the way up to halfway. And if that ball had bounced just a little bit more nicely for him, he may well have been gone, but it was Jaco van der Vault that rescued the situation for the Knights. And you mentioned Harry Morris, played open side flanker a couple of weeks ago, I think. Very versatile, but he is a hooker. Had a torrid time at the line out against Watsonians, and he's been picked off by Harriet.
There's a knock on from Young at the tail. You can hear the referee explaining to the sides what's happened, the infringement at that set piece.
Just going back to the line out there against Watsonians, I'm trying to remember who it was that kept. I think it was Jamie Beresford was an absolute nuisance for him last week, and it wasn't really Harry Morris's fault. Southern Knights didn't adapt their line out, I don't think, properly to get the ball away from Beresford. He was just kept thrown to the front. But that's 2 in a row Harry Morris has missed, and hopefully doubts are not entering his mind again. Is this going to be the same as last week?
I think it's been a common theme for the Knights as the pressure comes on from Heriot, and they blast that Southern Knights pack to smithereens in a defensive scrum. They go straight through the middle and splinter the Southern Knights scrum, and
I'm reversing the penalty. I'm reversing the penalty. Okay, we had initial penalty was for a collapsed scrum, then number 2 has shouted in number 3's face for a long period of time for no reason, so I'm reversing the penalty. Penalty is here, Southern Knights. Number 2, lip.
Very clear from the referee, and I think it's I like the exchange between him and Harry Morris. I think it's more comical in an Irish accent when he was explaining to the captain that he was reversing the decision, but you know, that's criminal from Heriot.
It is. You took the words right out of my mouth. It is really, really clear, and you know, the right decision. Probably 20 years ago, that nothing would have happened there. But in the modern game, that was always going to be reversed. Harry Morris just needs to find his man, and again, I think it's more a collective effort from the Knights line out. And once again, they've tried to take that easy option at the front, and it hasn't worked. Heriots have worked them out. It's 3 in a row they've lost.
Yeah, maybe a bit too obvious from the Knights there, looking to try and secure ball, but from that they managed to wrap up the Heriot hooker Elliot Young and create a maul, and now they've got a scrum in a very attractive position in terms of an attacking platform, but I think lurking in the back of their minds will be the pressure that they've just taken from the previous scrum.
Yeah, driven right off the ball by Heriot, so struggling at the set piece, both scrum and line out. And we go back, I'm not having a go at Harry Morris at all. Russell Anderson, who's on the bench, really struggled at line out time in the reverse fixture at the Greeners. I think one of the reasons that they lost that game, they couldn't build any pressure, so they kept losing line outs.
The Southern Knights look to try and get the ball back to the rear of the scrum as soon as possible, and it's been well controlled at the back there by Rudy Brown, because it looked like he was going to knock that on, and Vandervoort looks to try and go it alone. The crash ball 10 is something we don't see too often at this level of rugby, but it's been well turned over, and I think that's Hutchison and Wilson who have combined to get that ball back on a Heriot side, managing to isolate the Southern Knights fly half. And now Heriot's through Ronan Sadak, who manages to ride the challenge, and I think that looked like it was almost going to bobble out there, but the referee's got a good view of that. Now McLaren, using all his size and bulk to attract the Southern Knights defence and draw them in so he can set up the platform for Murdo McAndrew to kick downfield. They've let that bounce, but it's bounced fortunately for Aidan Cross, and he evades the first challenge and rides the one of Davidson. He's got a couple of Heriot's players there for company, but it's away quickly from the breakdown from Crawford, who finds Clark. Offers the ball back inside, but dummies and manages to get round Kyle McGee. He doesn't receive the ball back as Crawford again looks to try and keep the pace of attack pretty high. It's been well passed across by Robbie Deans. Vandervoort has got a hole there for Harry Morris to try and squeeze through, and he's taken two Heriot's players to bring him to ground. The first time we've really seen a big hole in that Heriot's defence. And it's all come from good work from the Southern Knights. Now Vandervoort, he's found McGee, manages to stand up Pecure, who eventually brings him to ground. Crawford's got Nelson coming around the corner, but little in terms of support. The Vandervoort is there, and Crawford again gets the ball away from the breakdown. Deans has got his second carry during this phase. And the Southern Knights players now coming around the corner, but isolated when attacking, and Wallace Nelson just running down an alley, and the Heriot's players were pretty privy to that, isolated the player and win the penalty.
Minute and a half.
Yeah, and they'll be relieved there as well, because once again the Knights look dangerous when they go through phases. We've spoken about the kicking and the clearance kick from Heriot's. In hindsight, they might have been better just to put it out, because they invited the Southern Knights back onto them, so the kick went about halfway, and a phase later they're back on their own 22. The Knights building pressure. We've spoken about how fast their ruck speed is, and they're proving quite hard to defend. And go back, Jaco Vandervoort, he's certainly getting himself involved in the game. He had that little dart that you spoke about, crash ball 10, we don't see a lot, but he got himself isolated. His back row were all on the ground from the previous maul. I'm not sure who he expected was going to clear the ruck for him. But he's mixing his game up. He's having a go himself. Sometimes he's kicking it. He's bringing other players into the game, and he's certainly doing a job at 10 for the Knights today.
Young finds his jumper, and it's come at the maul at a rate of knots, but it's been well gathered by McAndrew, and the ball has now eventually found its way to Hutchison, who finds Steele, and Steele looks to try and find Pecure back on the cut, but he's been well marshalled by the Southern Knights defence. But Heriot's looking to try and keep the ball alive as Sam Wallace carries the ball over the 10-metre line. And now it's broke free, and it's the Southern Knights almost to get the ball in hand, but Wallace Nelson not able to gather it, as Davidson now has got a chance to try and break free, throws the dummy, now got Leishman, he's got Hutchison in support, and he just brushes away Kieran Clark and scampers down the touchline, and that's a great cover and defend there by Douglas Crawford, and that tackle does bring proceedings to a close at half time, as a little exchange between Leishman and David Chang Ling brings to the end of what has been a very energetic and fast-paced first half. It's been over in the blink of an eye. It's certainly been an entertaining first 40 minutes, but it's Heriot who have just nudged in front after 40 minutes, and they lead the Southern Knights by 10 points to 7.
Call it the exuberance of youth.
Obviously it gives us a time to catch our breath, and we can have a little conversation about what the first half's proceedings have looked like. But first, it allows us a chance to go and see, because the Scotland women, their team kick off the Rugby World Cup campaign in the early hours of tomorrow morning when they face Wales at 5:45 a.m. We've been with the team this week as they prepare for their opening match and their first appearance at a Rugby World Cup for 12 years.
Yeah, but
Yes, much better. Really nice part of the country. This is the first time I've been up here personally, so really enjoying being here and looking forward to getting out and about. This morning was very much set piece focused, so we looked at some scrum and some line out and then some attack, and this afternoon we're going to be more defence focused. Someone in! Yeah, change! Yeah, come in! Change! Yeah, yellow! Yeah, clear! Take away! What time is on? Take away, help her! Take away! Excellent! I think for us it's around getting ourselves right. Our focus is very much around us, around improving in the areas that I think will make the difference this weekend. So working towards that in every session.
It's about doing that minute 1 to minute 80. That was the best we have done that, without a doubt. We can raise that. That's the exciting bit.
You should be really confident in what you have just put in there. Your work rate, right? The effort, travelling up here and getting 2 sessions like that, absolutely outstanding.
We've got a couple more sessions, we just keep chipping away, keep working. It's so good, girls. Scotland on 3, 1, 2, 3, Scotland! Wow! Brilliant work, girls!
So our women's national team competing in the World Cup and led by Brian Eason. They've certainly got an experienced coach leading them ahead of this World Cup, so set your alarms for 5:45 in the morning and get behind our national team as they look to try and defeat Wales in their opening fixture. And it's certainly been a great effort, and it's great to see all over social media how much they're enjoying their experience at this World Cup after a long time away from the competition. Back to domestic matters though, we're here at Goldenacre and it's Heriot who have got a very slender lead against the visitors, the Southern Knights, after what has been a very interesting first half. It's been energetic, it's been open, but Heriots, they managed to take an early lead through from an opportunistic try from Ian Wilson, but the Southern Knights straight away, Bruce Millar, who's alongside me, they were able to bounce back and come back into the game, and it was through this score from the great work from the forwards which allowed them to sneak in front for the first time.
Yes, just patient play, happy to go round the corner, and we said how difficult that can be for the defence, and in actual fact watching it back again, the defence were there, and it was just the power. When you get so close, it's nigh on impossible at some point. You're about a foot or 6 inches away. It doesn't matter how many bodies you've got there, you can't stop it.
You can see there they've got the likes of Hutchison, and they had Wilson who's just been drawn in, and then you've got Rory Steele and Davidson in defence, and it's the backs that they're bringing in there.
Exactly, yes, and it was maybe just that pass, because you can pick and go, but that's where the defence are often set for it. But instead, they just one short pass was enough to get them across the line, and then Leishman at the other end.
Yeah, it was the Southern Knights who held the lead for a long period of time, but after a little break from McAndrew from what was not an orthodox set piece from the line out, it was the captain Leishman who was able to get a sniff of the try line and just dive over, and the referee Ian Kenny did see that the ball got grounded, but the conversion attempt was missed, and that was all the action from the first half.
But the Knights would be kicking themselves there, as we said at the time. Their defence had generally been coping pretty well with everything that Heriot's threw at them. They'd forced them into kicking on a few occasions. And it was just Patrick Anderson, a little bit over-eager, went for the ball, and I know that it's often just too much to resist. I say that as a back row player, you just got a sniff of it, you wanted to get hands on, but they gave away the penalty. It was kicked to the corner, and then suddenly you're in real difficulties, because if you win the ball from the line out, if you don't drive over, you're then in a situation that, as we saw the Knights score from at the other end, you're 5 metres away from your opponent's try line. You can just afford to pick and go and play through the forwards, and yeah, Heriots went over for just about a deserved half-time lead.
Yeah, it's been close quarter action. It's tries from all the forwards. It was Nick Otterak to get the score for the Southern Knights, and the 2 tries from Leishman and Wilson for the Nails, as they're known. As you can see, the propaganda around about Goldenacre on display as they look to try and encourage the home side to victory.
Propaganda, I like it, yes. And unfortunately, we didn't get a look at that. We might get it later. The Ian Wilson try, because you're saying it was close quarter stuff, but it was actually some really good build-up down the left flank. Heriot had kicked it to the Knights, and then the Knights kick return. That was the one time they didn't quite get their defence set properly. They were too narrow. I think it was Blaine that carried back, as he has done 2 or 3 times today. Just he's got that speed and the power to evade the first couple of tackles, found his way to the middle of the pitch, which is then quite, it's a difficult place to defend from, because you've got options both ways. But it seems to be that Heriots have sensed there's more of a more space down their left flank. What was the stand side touchline in that first half, and they went across there. The Knights' defence was a bit thin on the ground, and it was Ian Wilson, in fact, the eventual try scorer, who raced down the touchline. And then 2 or 3 phases later, when they got close, it was Wilson went over. I've said for a long time, I think he's one of the best, one of the most complete back row players in the competition. He'll be, I don't know what, 30. I'm not going to say, because I might offend him. Mid 30s, let's just say. He's towards probably he's in the twilight, let's say, of his career at this level. But he has been such a good servant for Heriot Rugby. Yeah, ex-Howe Fife. He's representing the Scotland Club International as well. So he comes with a lot of experience. But he got the first score of the last instalment of round 9 of the FOSROC Super 6 weekend. It was obviously replied by Nick Otterak, and then Captain Leishman just nudges the Nails' noses in front at half time. But it's an interesting fixture, and this other fixture of the weekend, where Boroughmuir were defeated by Watsonians, was as equally as poised at half time. But this is a completely different dynamic. The league leaders, or the kind of one of the favourites for the Super 6 Championship, were behind at half time. But this is equally as tight, but it just happens that the team towards the foot of the table are making a game of it. You'd think I'd remember when we just commentated on it. I think it was exactly the same scoreline, wasn't it? It was 10-7 at half time. It was the home side that led then as well. So we've got an identical half time score. And in the second half, it was the visitors who just edged away. Jason Baggett levelled things with a penalty, and then they scored 3 tries after that. I'm not sure we're going to see the same today. I think this is going to be much closer to the end. I don't know who I would pick as the eventual winner here. I think if the Southern Knights can tidy up, we spoke at the start, maybe lacking a little bit of accuracy. If they can tidy up there, but more importantly, sort their set piece, because their line out hasn't been great once again. Scrum's been under a little bit of pressure. I fancy the Knights could produce what we'd probably consider a little bit of a shock here. Yeah, I think it would be a shock. I'm probably not going to wager that it's going to be a repeat scoreline of the previous fixtures, 10 points to 27. Watsonians did eventually win that game to maintain their position as top dogs in the FOSROC Super 6 Championship. But short term, we look short term for Heriots. They'll be looking towards the playoffs. But you look long term for the Knights. They are missing something. Can you put your finger on what you feel they're missing? No. Neither can I. In short, we've said how they've really struggled with injuries. So you spoke earlier about the importance of building combinations and turning out the same team. I think if we went back to that Watsonians team, we said how it maybe is broken up a little bit lately as they rotate players. But guys like Lewis Berg has played, I think, every single game until last week. They've got a lot of consistency in selection. The Knights haven't been able to do that. They've probably not benefited the same from the pro release, which if you get 1 or 2 big name players in, it does make such a difference. But I'm repeating myself now. I think it's just those little things that where their skills let them down under pressure. The first action of the game, they weren't able to take the restart. Their set piece is not perfect. If they can tidy up those things, I think they will be a force to be reckoned with, and they've got the second half here and next week's game to keep developing, show us what they can do. But this will be another very interesting and I suspect frantic second half. And get comfortable for what will be a roller coaster of a second half here at Goldenacre as play
is back underway through the right boot of Jaco van der Walt.
Option.
And it's straight back to the halfway line, and Bruce Millar just alluded to the little mistakes that are creeping into Southern Knights game, and we were about 7 seconds into the second half, and one of the most experienced players, Jaco van der Walt, just punts it out in the full.
Yeah, you could accept that if it was a young 17 or 18 year old fly half that got a little bit overexcited, but you don't expect that from Jaco van der Walt.
Yeah, it was really good half, wasn't it?
Yeah, was it? I agree with you, Ian Kenny. It was a very good first half. They just having a little chin wag with the visiting scrum half.
He's been good.
He has been good. He's been good value.
Crouch!
I think he's
Bind!
probably pretty happy. He plays back in the halfway line. He's not got to move far. But it's going to be a put into the scrum for Heriot.
Yeah, come on now, Murdoch.
You see Douglas Crawford just signalling to his players when the ball's in, and it's a messy scrum there. The pressure's come on from the Knights, but
gone around on the axis, right?
Yep, the referee has just
nobody's gone backwards.
outlined that it's just a scruffy scrum, and it's going to be a reset, put back in for Heriot.
Nice. In a bit quicker.
I think that's interesting, the conversation that Ian Kenny is having with Murdo McAndrew, asking him to put it in quicker, because there is a slight contrast in styles between the two nines. Douglas Crawford likes to play with a bit of pace, where McAndrew is a little bit more methodical in the way that he gets the ball away from the breakdown.
Set!
He takes his time again, but the referee is happy with that, and again the pressure coming on from the Knights, but Heriot's get it back on their side through Hutchison, who bounces off his left foot and then bounces straight over the top of Douglas Crawford. And there's numbers up on this side for Heriot if they can find Picure, who kicks over the head of Colvin, and it's just went out. I think it's just the curvature of the ball, the angle that he's kicked it at, has just drifted that over the touch line, but that was dangerous from Heriot.
If that had stayed in field, yeah, there was nobody really at the back. Picure, he's been a little bit quieter in the last couple of games, but he had a superb start to the Super 6 season. And just even from the scrum there, the Knights' defence didn't seem to quite get it right. I thought that Crawford probably should have gone out to the first man, but they're defending in the way instead of out the way there, and there was space on the left.
Play away 7, Sack's good.
That's Ferry getting the ball. Now it's the guy who threw it into the line out. Harry Morris, who's, you can see the hybrid nature of his plays, very dynamic off the tail.
Tackle, guys.
And now Robbie Deans, he gets a knee to the ground, so the referee does have to call the tackle, and the Heriot's players release the tight head prop. Now Crawford, left-footed box kick over the halfway line, and it's been well contested by Aidan Cross, who had a check of his fingernails there because he thought he was going to be in touch, but he's another player that I've been impressed with, but fielded that ball well there, managed to stay in field, just unlucky, couldn't get the ball away to a teammate.
I was going to say, I think it was fingernails were on that line, the assistant referee having a very close look, but that was a fantastic take. He scored, I think it was the first try, down at the Green Yards against Heriot, much stronger than his small frame would suggest.
I've been very impressed with, there's two players in the Southern Knights that have came up this year. He is one of them. Aidan Cross, the other one, Sam Derrick, I've been equally as impressed with.
The whole young back row for the Knights has been good.
Yeah, definitely. It's been one of the positives to take forward for this young team. One of the youngest teams in the Super 6. And that's great footwork from the Knights as they look to try and build a head of steam and get deeper into this Heriot's half. And Crawford has to wait for the ball this time. It's come to McGee. He's found Colvin. The young electrician has to ride the tackle just over the 10-metre line. And Sam Wallace now looking to try and make a nuisance of himself. He just comes in the side there.
Well, and I think it was the side. I'd like to see that again.
Yeah, it definitely did look like it was an illegal entry. But he's another player that's stepped up from the amateur game and certainly doesn't look out of place, especially for he's got a relatively small stature when he's standing there next to his forward colleagues. But he puts himself about, and obviously he was the man that set up Picure in the game at the Green Yards with a great run, great awareness.
You can't go in between the flanker and the number 8. Crouch! Bind! Set!
Well, that scrum is pretty quick to the ground.
Okay.
Happened a bit too quick for my eyes there, but it looked for a second like it was maybe Josh Scott had gone first.
Yeah, I have been impressed with Robbie Deans, I think, in the front row.
I don't know what was said at half time, but this has gotten a bit messy now, okay? So you need to keep your bind up, you keep your feet under your body, keep your shoulders above your hips. This side of the scrum, both of you stay driving straight. 4 instructions, guys, please follow them.
Yeah, Robbie Deans has got a good body shape for a tight head prop on loan from Watsonians.
Yeah, he's certainly making life difficult for Josh Scott, who has equally got a good awkward frame for a front row. Very, very tall, very bulky as well. As the Southern Knights scrum started to creak backwards slightly, but it's been well gathered there by Paddy Anderson. He works hard in contact to get the ball back, and Crawford finds Van de Voort, who's just sitting in the pocket looking to try and orchestrate things with his boot, and Aidan Cross almost preempted the bouncing ball, but it's been well gathered there. And then it's now Pecure. He manages to fend the first player, and he's been met by Cross, who's got Wallace Nelson for some help there.
Thanks, Evan, your tackler.
And now McAndrew finds McLaren, who's got Dan King just on his shoulder. It's been well controlled there by young Kieran Clark. Another player who's struggled with injury. He's not really been able to push on from the early stages of his development. And Patrick Anderson, now with the ball in hand, does well to stay in field. There's a scruffy ball from Crawford, but it does eventually find Wallace Nelson, and he's managed to splinter through the Heriot's defence and get a long shape on his body as he looked to present that back, but Heriot's a bit quicker and a bit more willing to put their body on the line for that ball. And now Dan King kicking downfield now that Heriot's have the ball back. They kick it straight back down to the Southern Knights, and David Colvin puts a high ball up, an awkward ball for Rory Steele to try and deal with. And he slowly starts to tease the Southern Knights defence, but runs straight into the chest of Wallace Nelson. And now McAndrew. He's got Cammy Hutchison acting as first receiver, but he's been met with another few good, robust Southern Knights challenges. Defence has certainly been one of the positives for the Knights and for Heriot's during this game. They've found it hard to try and really break through each other's stubborn defence.
It's just an accident, guys. It's just an accident. We'll restart with the scrum, okay? Yeah, you've just fallen. Time off. You've just fallen on top of it. It's just an accident. Don't worry about it.
Yep, the referee quite clear there, just noticing that there was a coming together there. And I think Fraser Hastie is the player on the ground who's getting some treatment. Again, good awareness from Ian Kenny.
Yeah. Just make sure he's okay first.
Great break by Wallace Nelson. I think just caught his own team by surprise with the injection of pace. He'll be a little bit disappointed that the support didn't get to him in time. It was turned over by Heriot, so sort of forced to just throw the ball back. Hastie seems okay.
Yeah, he's having a couple of nods to the medical staff who are on the pitch.
You've had 2 now. If you can just give me a better picture of a release. Yeah, because there's been one certainly over there, and then one here was tight. Okay. Yes, go on.
I think Ian Kenny, the way he communicates with the players, I think he might be back in August for the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh. His communication is brilliant. The way he's articulating the laws to the players, it's really refreshing to hear.
Don't need to be having resets every
That's
time.
good, yeah, because he may well have penalised both those occasions, Wallace Nelson, but rather than that, because it was borderline. I thought it was fine, but the referee's saying it's just getting a bit too tight for his liking. He wants to see a clearer release, and he's told him about it. We'll penalise him next time if he does it again. That's good refereeing.
McAndrew rolling into what was a steady scrum, and the pressure does come on from the Knights. They get that second nudge on as Wallace Nelson tries to initiate the actions that the referee has told them to demonstrate. And Heriot's now looking to try and break from some set piece and some set plays behind that ruck. And the fight on the floor is quite intense from Aidan Cross, who looks to try and get his arms in there to get the ball back, but Heriot's do well to bring it back on their side. And it's now Steele who puts put to ball, but it's been well gathered there by Ferry. He's looking to get the ball out to Aidan Cross and does really well to keep the ball alive. Now the sprightly winger is taking play forward, but he's been wrapped up there by Rory Steele, but the referee's happy that the clear out was legal. And now Van der Vault, there's plenty of space over on this far side, and perhaps a bit early with the pass, but it does eventually come into Kieran Clark, who takes man and ball.
No,
and it was Davidson who was rushing out the line to meet Kieran Clark. And now Van der Vault, he feeds Ferry, the player who started this move with an inventive bit of play. Now Van der Vault passing back in field. Rudy Brown was quite alert to the situation there and just dropped the ball and picked up again and went because he wasn't held, but the ball almost fell into the hands of Jack Blaine. But the two players came together. I think that's David Colvin over on that far side, and I think if his noggin wasn't there, I think Jack Blaine was going to be scampering in for a score. But both players are going to get attention, and they're all going to stop for a water break. But that was dangerous from Heriot.
We'll get a look at it here. I think that ball from Van der Vault, if Blaine had taken that, he was gone. Nobody getting back, and you know, the pass from Van der Vault, but actually in the phases before that, he started to impose himself on the game a bit more, get himself involved. We spoke in the first half about Dan King not being quite as connected to the forward pod in front of him, where Van der Vault is. He got the ball out the back of the pod in one of the plays and got the ball a little bit wider. He's then quickly in at first receiver and bringing in his forwards in the midfield, and then he's trying to get the ball wide and mix the game up. We've seen him have a little bit of a break himself in the first half, whereas now he's become more distributor and organiser. And
that was a legal attempt to regather the ball, so it's just a knock on. We'll
listen to the referee again. There, an illegal attempt to regather the balls. We get a bit of treatment. Is that Rudy Brown? I think just getting some treatment.
A scrum knock on from your wing going for the intercept.
It was a knock on by Blaine as he went for that intercept.
It's been an interesting start to the second half. I feel the Southern Knights have perhaps controlled the opening stages of the second half, and they look the most likely to score, apart from that opportunistic poacher's attempt from Blaine. You know, they look the most likely to get the first score in the second half, and it's going to be another put into the scrum for the Knights. And you can see a replacement there as Ewan McLaren. Ex-Southern Knight himself is going to be replaced by Dan Gamble, the Scotland age grade international.
Much of the game has been played in the middle of the pitch. I agree that I think the Knights have just maybe fractionally got more control of the game in the first 10 minutes or so of this second half, but they need to get themselves deeper into Heriot's territory rather than looking to score tries from deep.
You see another couple of changes for the home side. Ali Rogers is on for Josh Scott, and also Jake Hendry has replaced Sam Pecure on the wing. Certainly not a bad replacement, that last one.
Ball to the back, play away. Stay on.
A scrappy scrum there, but the referee allowing play to go on as Patrick Anderson takes play up to the line. Kieran Clark does well to bounce back in field, but just not able to evade the challenges there as Alan Ferry tips the ball back to Rudy Brown, and Ian Wilson is all over that ball, but it's been well gathered by Wallace Nelson.
Tackle or release.
And I thought that was almost great work on the floor from the replacement there, Ali Rogers. But you can hear the referee explaining that there's no tackle release and the Southern Knights are going to have a pop at the sticks.
Ali Rogers on loan from Ayrshire Bulls.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the referee there. They were just over eager. Both last two breakdowns, hands in that shouldn't have been allowed in there. I think if that ball out the back from Patrick Anderson to, I think it was to Kieran Clark, wasn't it? If he had just put him a little bit wider, Clark had to check his run a little bit and straighten up, where I think what the Knights were trying to do was go wide there. And they would have had a chance down the right touchline, but a penalty attempt here from out in front, which you would expect him to get, and 10 apiece, half an hour remaining, would make this very interesting.
We did say that the Knights were most likely to get the next point in the second half, and it's fallen to the right boot of Jaco van der Vault.
22.
And the flags stay down. It looked like a scruffy attempt there from the experienced fly half, but he can't get the extras there, so it remains Heriot's 10, Southern Knights 7. 52.5 minutes played here at Goldenacre, and it would mean that Heriot still keep the pressure on Boroughmuir Bears going into the final weekend, and the Knights would, if the scores stay the same, they would just go a point ahead of the Stirling Wolves at the foot of the table. And now Rudy Brown, the big hunched over run.
Release.
It certainly
Release,
looks like he
release.
means
No.
business.
18, no.
And it's came back on a Knights side. Crawford's found Harry Morris. And again, Crawford getting the ball quickly away from the breakdown, but it's not been able to be gathered by Henry. From Ferry, sorry. It's ended up in the hands of Jake Henry.
Advantage over from the knock-on.
Now the Heriot's players trying to link up. It's Sadak looking to try and find Sam Wallace, but it's eventually fallen flat. But Heriot's get it back on their side, and Murdo McAndrew having a little look up in the backfield to see if it's on. Instead opting to find his fly half, who's just fed it to Cammy Hutchison.
No hand free, you're not first man.
A player who was the Scotland under-19s captain a few years ago now. It's a good attacking kick there. Look to try and keep in by Donald Crawford, but it's going to be a throw into the line out for the Southern Knights. But again, good tactical play from Heriot's to notice that there's space in the backfield and exploit it.
That was a really good kick there by Dan King, and the assistant referee didn't even look 100% sure whether that ball had gone into touch inside the 22, which would have been a 50-22. Heriot's thrown to the line out or outside, and I think he's maybe just opted for the safer of the two options there. It'll be Harry Morris just standing on the 22. He really needs to find, he was under pressure in the line out in the first half and needs to find his man, and he doesn't.
Roll fight!
Is that going to come back on a Knights side? It does, and it's Alan Ferry who tries to burrow his way in between the Heriots guards round the fringes there.
Release
The Southern Knights look to try and steady the ship to give their backs that platform to exit their own 22. Jaco van der Vault is lurking in the backfield, but it's Crawford's left boot which is tasked with kicking it downfield. It's bounced awkwardly for Henry, but he's found Rory Steele, who looks to just try and chip it over the top. He's not got a lot of power on that, and it's fallen to McGee, who then eventually it does find Kieran Clark, who's
no hands, Steve, no hands, 15. You're off
looking
feet.
to try
You're
and
off feet.
find a space in the defence, but again, there's not a lot happening as the kick downfield is falling at the hands of Aidan Cross. And now is he going to win the foot race into the corner? It looks like he's going to outstretch Jake Henry, and he gets in for a score, and that is an excellent finish from the winger, but it looks like he's been injured in the act of scoring, and Jake Henry just could not get across the field quick enough. And Aidan Cross showing exactly what he brings to this Southern Knights team, a player who stepped up from National 1 Rugby with Melrose and gets a score, and the Knights sneak ahead.
That comes from absolutely nothing. A lovely disguise there by van der Vault. I mean, he was looking outside, the Heriots defence coming up quickly, and he just waited and waited and pulled the defence forward. And we couldn't see on screen there that how much space there was in behind. You see here he's looking out, and everything he does there tells the Heriots defence that he's going to pass. And just at the last minute he kicks, and Aidan Cross, he stumbled, and he's still at the pace to recover, and that's a very acrobatic finish there as he dived. Did really well to keep his feet in the field of play, and a great attempt by Henry. We'll see it from a different angle here. There's that little stumble that allowed Henry to get across them, and he just picked his moment to dive to get off the ground, and then an impossible tackle for Henry, and the Knights, well, we did say they were the most likely team to score in the second half. Well, they've done that in a slightly unexpected fashion from the kick by this man that's lining up the conversion, Jaco van der Vault.
Yeah, a bit of innovative play from the experienced fly half, released his winger. And he's got what is the most challenging kick of the afternoon so far to try and extend the Southern Knights lead. It's just not got the power on it. It just falls short of the posts. And it remains Heriot's 10, Southern Knights 12. And you did say this would be an upset, and I would tend to agree with you if it does stay the same. But the Knights look like they know what the task in hand is. They look pretty polished in terms of the way that they're approaching this game.
Yeah, it's just little bits of it. We've spoken about the set piece. Everything else is superb, and Jaco van der Vault, as we said, is more and more imposed himself on the game, and he's giving his side an edge here. Rory Steele, who was prominent in the first half, trying to get his side in the front foot again.
The try came from an equally awkward
50-22's on, guys.
50-50 kick, which did end up coming back on a Southern Knights side, but It's Knights who are got control of this game so far. They've had a very impressive last 17 minutes. And again, they kick downfield and force their hosts to return it back to them. They don't make as much territory. And they kick it downfield, and it's going to be a throw into the line out. Harry Morris is going to be the player to throw it in. Then the Knights look confident, and in terms of league position, you would have thought, if you were watching this for the first time, you would have thought they were in different positions.
Well, if they'd won the game at the Green Yards against today's opponents, what is there between the sides just now? I think there's 11 points between them. It might be more like, depends on bonus points, but you might be looking at more like a sort of 8-point gap or something of the sort, and then a win today gets them within maybe 3 or 4. And it looks entirely different. And then, of course, they're playing next week against the Wolves to perhaps get themselves a 4th place in a playoff. So there's fine margins in it, but they just haven't quite been good enough across the piece to merit a playoff place. But really positive signs for the Southern Knights. Last week in particular, I said for a while they were unplayable almost against Watsonians. Eventually overrun by the team at the top of the table, which is no surprise, but I think we're seeing now that actually between the bottom 4 teams in the league, these two, Heriot and Stirling, there's maybe not an awful lot separates them.
Russell Anderson and Grant Shields coming onto the field for the Southern Knights, so I did lie to you saying Harry Morris was going to throw into the line out, because it's going to be Russell Anderson's first attempt. He finds Campbell, so he's accurate from the line out, and Wallace Nelson splinters off. He finds Crawford, who finds Vandervolt. He spills a ball over to the far side. Aidan Cross showing no ill effects of his earlier injury. Looks to go round Dan King, and he's going to go in the corner for his second score. And that is a brilliant finish from Aidan Cross. He is at the double here at Goldenacre, and that is a brilliant finish from the winger. Managing to go round the challenges, show great power and pace, but it's that ball from Vandervolt which allowed him all the space in the world to ghost round King, get the left-hand fend on, and it's another expert finish in the corner.
Superb finish by the winger, and really good accurate play in the lead up there. There's not many can throw that pass that Vandervolt did there. Just gave his winger every opportunity on the outside, but still a huge amount to do. He had Dan King there that he had to go round, and then racing across his opposite number, and he had the pace and the power to get in. That's 3 tries he's scored against Heriot's, 2 today and 1 down at the Green Yards, a real thorn in their side, but it was Vandervolt. We've spoken about him, the effect he's had in the game in this second half. It's lining up this conversion. It's really brought the game to life, and a quick mention for Wallace Nelson, who's the man to take the ball from the line out. A nice accurate pass from him initially to Crawford, and the Knights really upping their game.
A similar position here for Vandervolt to add the extras. He looks to give it a little bit more power, and it almost looked better the second time round, but it's a similar result. So it's a 7-point lead for the Knights, but I would echo your sentiment about Wallace Nelson. I've been thoroughly impressed with the back row. The open side's had probably one of his best games in a Knights shirt so far.
7 points gone a begging from the boot of Jaco Vandervolt. Missed a penalty, remember, 12 minutes into this half, and he's missed both conversions, difficult kicks. I hope that doesn't come back to haunt the Southern Knights.
I think you've just nailed your colours to the mast there, Bruce, with a Southern Knights fan. It's well tidied up there by the Knights in their 22.
Use 12.
I know you meant that generally. I know you weren't just outing yourself as a Southern Knights fan, but it's been kicked downfield, and it's not made a lot of ground in terms of getting out of their own half. And Heriot's now got the ball in hand through Jed Gelderblom. And he's got Jake Hendry. He looks to try and evade the clutches of the Southern Knights defence. But again, the work of Deans and Derrick on the floor. I mean, it's going to be a penalty to the Knights, and they certainly look like they've got confidence, and it looks like the pressure's slightly off the Southern Knights, because they're playing with a lot of enthusiasm.
The pressure was never really on them, was that they've no hope of qualifying for the playoffs, so they could come here and throw the ball out, but it didn't look like that in the first half. Whereas now perhaps it does a little bit more. They've thrown the shackles off, and
play. That's all
I thought that had gone in, but it's been kept in. We'll find out if that was a good option or not from this kick, because I think it's going to get them run straight back at them by the Knights.
McGee throws a floaty pass back in field, and it's into the hands of the replacement Harris Rutherford.
Feet 16, let it come.
He does well to protect that ball and get it back. He's been well supported by his teammates, as you can
Tackle,
see that
17,
low
release.
sun just spilling over the back of the stand here at Goldenacre. And McGee acting as scrum half.
No hands out, Harriet.
I think he might have perhaps replaced Douglas Crawford in that position. He tends to
Tackle
switch
now,
between
release.
centre and scrum
Release.
half. And McGee again. He's at that breakdown. Certainly a different type of 9 to Douglas Crawford. Harris Rutherford playing his standoff. Now Patrick Anderson. He's been met with a swarm of Heriot's players, but he's done well to ride the challenges and get the ball back on a Southern Knights side yet again. Now the ever impressive Wallace Nelson carrying up and making some yards. David Colvin noticing some space in behind, drops it on the boot.
Yeah, you're grand now.
A very fortunate ball there for Heriot's to deal with. It bounced kindly. And I think it's maybe been kicked out on the full there from Heriot's as well. So it's maybe not a great execution by David Colvin, but it's a cracking end result.
Yeah, it's worked for him in the end. I'm not sure it was the best kick. Just the way he kicked it was always going to bounce up nicely for the Heriot's player, and there was nobody at home on that right side for Southern Knights. If that had stayed in, it was going to be a poor kick from Colvin, but as it has turned out, it's worked well for him. And Russell Anderson, let's see if you can have any more joy at line out time than Harry Morris. I think that's a big work on area. They've come to the front again, and it's just a mess, that Southern Knights line out.
It has been an Achilles heel of Southern Knights all season. I don't think Anderson, Rennick or Morris have hit their targets, but it's a chance here for Heriot to stretch the ball and get it wide.
Out in line, flat.
And good play back in field there from Jack Blaine. And he's still charging forward. He's been
back foot
clotheslined there by Vandervoort, who just got round the the shoulder area. And it's just been knocked off a foot there, but I think that the
3 and 7
off the feet, but it looked like the Southern Knights player was perhaps in an offside position when he gathered the ball, but the referee, as you can hear, has signalled that number 3, number 7 were off their feet. So it's going to be a penalty to Heriot's, and Michael Linus is already en route to the line-out.
So the Knights have an attacking line-out, essentially a diagonally opposite corner from where we are now. And for the umpteenth time in this game, failed to find their man. And then a carry and a penalty later, they now find themselves defending inside their own 22. It's just one of the little things you asked me before, can I put my finger on it? And it's just lots of little things, but that set piece is absolutely killing them.
Michael Linus thrown into the line-out. A late replacement to the squad.
Same maul.
But
don't lift the leg, 7.
Don't his target there with his first throw into the line out, and now Heriot splinter free from the side of that maul, and it's Ian Wilson. The athletic Ian Wilson finds his captain Leishman.
Tackle now, back foot.
And he burrows towards the line, but he's been held short. Now Sadak, he's been met by Wallace Nelson, who bursts out the line. And now Michael Linus. He got 2 tries at the Green Yards. He'll be looking to try and get another one against this team. And Dan Gamble now looks to have a little spurt towards the line, but it's been stripped in the act of the tackle there. But the referee
5
has penalised Alan Ferry, and it's going to be a penalty to Heriot.
15 minutes.
It'll be interesting. They've obviously asked the referee how long's left, which I think will.
You never released the man after he was tackled.
I think it will certainly outline their decision. I think they're going to have a pop at the stick, so I think that does point.
Shots could be called, yeah, but you still need to stay on the line.
I think that points to how well the Southern Knights have been playing.
I think so, yes. But with 15 minutes left, you've got a gimme. You'd like to think a gimme right in front of the posts, and then you're going to get the ball back. You've still got 12 minutes or 13 or so to play with and win the game, rather than chasing a try to perhaps get yourself a draw. So maybe that wasn't the clearest explanation, but that certainly would have been my option had I been the Heriot's captain there. But again, I go back to how we got here. We had a line out down the Southern Knights right touch line, and all they needed to do was hit their line out. I say all they needed to do. It's something they've found difficult for all season. But then they're attacking at the other end and building pressure on Heriot, and 2 minutes later they find themselves other end, and could have been worse. Could have conceded a try, conceded a penalty.
Yeah, it's the replacement Ross Jones who gets the penalty from a relatively easy angle. It narrows the gap. Heriot's 13, Southern Knights 17. Isaac Brace is going to come onto the the field, I believe, for Robbie Deans. And the Knights, perhaps the errors are allowing the door to creak slightly. But it's been a shank off the tee there from Heriot, and it's skewed out the field, and it's been a very good territorial gain for the Southern Knights this time.
Yeah, just one of those ones that you sometimes get not a great kick. I think all my kicks would look like that, to be perfectly honest. That's why I never generally attempted any.
Maybe 12, it might be a bit off.
We're almost identical situation where we were 2 or 3 minutes ago, and Russell Anderson failed to find his man. They've changed their line out, and that's better. They've moved, they've shifted the point of contact instead of just going to that supposedly safe front ball.
One stop,
here they go.
Yeah, it's a good initial nudge from them all. It's splintered away now, and Russell Anderson's the player who will take over the captain duties now that he's replaced Harry Morris. He's found his target, he's made some good yards, and now the Knights look to try and launch an attack, and it's Vandervoort looking to just twist and weave his way in between the Heriot's defence. There's a good floating pass out wide there for McGee. He finds Patrick Anderson, who's lifted it off the floor, and it's David Colvin who's used his slight footwork to go underneath the post, evade the defender, and the Southern Knights go in for yet another score. And it's David Colvin, an early replacement, getting the score, but it's great initial work from McGee. A great pass off the floor from Patrick Anderson, and you can see here that floating pass across. Patrick Anderson evading the defence, managing to stay upright, and when he's fallen to the ground, just lifting it to David Colvin, who evades the fullback and goes in for a score. And you can see how pleased the Southern Knights are with that.
That was really good work by. You can see Patrick Anderson just to the right of your screen there come on very early in the first half, when we lost Finn Douglas, and he's been really good since he came on. And just that outside break, he stumbled, and I think if he'd gone to deck there, the chance was lost, but he managed to keep on his feet. He went on the outside of his opposite number, and then as he went to deck, it was a great offload, but great support line as well from David Colvin. And the Knights, we've said it, very much worth their healthy looking advantage now.
Yeah, I think the Knights might start breaking the bank to keep Jaco Vandervoort at the Green Yards next season. He's certainly had a positive impact on this young Knights squad. But David Colvin showing all the great work, and it's good from the restart there from the Knights. And good work from Ferry, who found Derek, and looking to play with confidence. And now Ferry with his hands on ball. It was actually Jamie Campbell who plucked it up from the restart. But back to the try.
Water break.
Back to the referee calls for a break in play. Back to the try. That's David Colvin is a great Sevens player as well. We know we've got a lot of players on the field who have played Scotland Sevens, Matt Davidson being one of them, Sam Picure. But David Colvin, he's played a lot in the Borders circuit in Sevens, and he just shows that balance of running that he's got with that support in line, running off of Patrick Anderson. That was a great score, and bearing in mind, Southern Knights are now sitting on a try bonus.
Yes, fourth try, and we keep repeating ourselves. It's just a shame that it's so late in the season that they're perhaps finding their form. May well have been a force to be reckoned with. There's still too many. I keep using the word, but inaccuracies in their game to really threaten the top two teams, I think, just now. But they're just starting to find their feet. There's little things.
I don't think you're wrong in saying that, though, because Ben Cairn said that about his Wolves team. He says they're really, really good, but it's the end product, it's the last bit, it's the decision making. And that's something that the Knights have suffered from.
Yeah, there are all sorts of little things that I'm not going to bore everybody by going over them. There are little things like I'll not even name individual players, but as they go into contact, you're almost expecting a Heriot's turnover every time, because they're not, for example, fighting their way through the contact. They're sort of flopping at opponents' feet, and it allows them to get hands on. It's those little things that if you can tidy up, and it allows you to go through more phases. And say, I'm just picking one little element of the game. I'm not trying to claim to be a breakdown expert here, but it just lets you compete. But anyway, back to the action.
It's certainly been a more positive showing for the Southern Knights at Goldenacre. Yet to win at home, but they've won once on the road in the Super 6 campaign so far this season. And they're hoping to double that tally. But Heriot, I'll have a lot to say about that in the final 10 minutes of this game. It's a carry from Ronan Sadak. It doesn't make much in the way of yardage yet again, as the Southern Knights are building good defence, but it's now been splintered. There's a 2-on-1 situation here, but Heriot just cannot get the ball to hand. And it's ended up back on a Southern Knights side, so they escape for now. And now they have to escape their 22. Rudy Brown, the player, he's been asked to try and tidy that up. There's been a knock on from Heriot. It'll be a put into the scrum, but that shows you what Heriot can do.
It does. I hope we can get another look at that, because it was, I think it was Patrick Anderson that made the tackle on the Heriot's player. I thought For All Money was in. It looked like a 2-on-1, and
Harriet's 10. Number 10.
Are we going to get a look at it here? No, it's just afterwards. I think it just looked like Patrick Anderson that made the tackle when I was certain it was going to be a Heriot's try.
Time on.
And only, 9 points between the teams. If Heriot score here, still very much in this game.
It is, we said at half time how interesting the second half was going to be, and we said we wouldn't put our money on a 27 points to 10 win for the visitors, which was similar to the first game. The first game today anyway. It's pretty much gone in quite a similar fashion. The visitors have dominated the first half hour in their second half, and they've got 9 minutes to see it through in what would be an unlikely victory.
We don't want to be
Just correct my arithmetic, it's 11 points. I didn't realise that conversion. I think we were showing 13-22, but that Jaco van der Velk conversion of Colvin's try did go over, so it's a healthier looking advantage to the Knights.
Crouch!
And Heriot's rather running out of time if they don't want to suffer another home defeat.
Set!
And Kyle McGee feeds the scrum.
Stay
it's
on.
a secure scrum there, and Rudy Brown looks to try and fend the first challenge, but he's been well scragged there, and it's been well contested on the floor. And you can see how much that means to the Knights, and they win the penalty.
That, I think if we see it again as an example of exactly what I was talking about, the work of or lack of it of the ball carrier well, even at the breakdown, just before that is they take it into contact. Again, maybe I'm being too critical, but you know, if Rudy Brown drives through contact there, and it's so much harder. But as you just essentially flop onto your side at the feet of one of your opponents, they're almost bound to steal it. So I think that's something I've seen all game from the Knights.
And this is a dangerous position for Heriot. They love this sort of territory as they hit their target, and they look to try and squeak this forward. Rudy Leishman adding his bulk to it, and it looks like it's Ian Wilson at the tail there. Look at the twist and turn his way over the whitewash. And the referee barking orders to the defence. And Heriot's knock at the door again.
Goal line, goal line.
They feed Linus. Linus looking to try and squeeze his way over the line. And Gelderblom, it passes that flat ball to Hutchison.
No hand, 7.
He tries to sniff out the try line, but it's not coming on this occasion as Gelderblom has a little look. And he does found the towering figure
release, back foot
of Dan Gamble. And now Jones feeds the ball out to Blaine. Blaine rides the first challenge, gets the big fend in, and the towering winger blasts his way over for a score. And this game is not beyond Heriot's yet. Heriot's 18, Southern Knights 24.
No, and impossible to stop Blaine when he gets into a position like that. Dan Gamble, you see, just carrying, and as we saw from the Knights in the first half with their score, Heriot's, though more quickly realising the space was out wide and out it went to Blaine. He still had some work to do, but I mean, look, you can see the size of him, still a young man, but a real physical specimen, and you're just not going to stop him from there.
Yeah, I've always been impressed with Jack Blaine. I think finding opportunities in a very competitive position when he's having life at Edinburgh has been difficult for him, but certainly when he's contributed to the Super 6, he shows his class, his power and his pace. Now the conversion attempt to come. And that's a successful attempt. It makes it 4 points, the difference between Heriot's and the Southern Knights.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
The referee, Ian Kenny, just making sure that all players are fully aware of how much is left on the clock. 5 minutes left, and it's 4 points to try and overturn. And this is going to be an interesting completion to this game. How do Heriot get field position? And can Southern Knights hold on to this slender lead? Do they have the bottle to win for only a second time in the Super 6 Championship.
Take a step.
And Gelderbloom slowing pace down, looking to try and exit from inside his own half. He puts a contestable ball up, but it's went straight out and bounced before it's left the field of play. And it's going to be a throw into the line out to the Southern Knights, and with 4 minutes to go, you would say that it's advantage Knights at the moment.
Well, it is advantage Knights, but you can see how quickly things change. We were around here not so long ago, and before you know it, Heriots have scored at the other end because of the inaccuracy at the Knights. The Knights set piece. Their last one was better. They just changed things up a bit. They set their pod of 3 at the front and 2 at the back, and then they beat Heriots across the ground. Done the same, beat them for speed there and more secure.
Back to ground, breakaway.
The ball has went forward there in the maul. It looks like it's been absorbed by Heriots, but it comes back on a Southern Knights side, and with the game so finely poised, it's going to be an interesting decision for your FOSROC Super 6 player of the match, Bruce. I certainly don't envy your task, but it's there's certainly been a few players out there, and I think there's probably a few players that will still have their say as we reach the culmination of this fixture. Rutherford plays most of his rugby for Gala and getting an opportunity in Super 6, and Wallace Nelson yet again carrying the ball. He's been tireless in this game. Russell Anderson acting as a pivot, finds Rutherford, who finds Derek, and now Cross, who's on a hat-trick, looks to go across field, but he's been clattered in midfield by Dan Gamble.
16.
And it's going to be a penalty to the Knights. And you can see them slow the pace here, and as they know they hold all the cards.
Yeah, that was a good decision by the referee. Whichever one of the Heriots players got hands on that will think he was hard done by, but the only reason he got hands on the ball was because I think it was Dan Gamble made the tackle, didn't get out the tackle area quickly enough, so it just makes the Southern Knights clear all that much harder. So the referee's got a lot to take in there, but yes, it's very much advantage Southern Knights now, and I think that man in the centre of our screen.
Have you got any idea why we're focusing on him, Bruce?
Well, that was the man that I've chosen as our FOSROC Super 6 player of the match. There were a number of candidates, but for me, he's been, I know I'm biased, that's the position I played, so it's when you're always watching, but he's been in absolutely everything. He put in 2 or 3 colossal hits. He has carried so many times. He's been a bit of a nuisance at the breakdown. His speed around the park is good. There was a pass, I think, which led up to, was it Aidan Cross's first try, which, okay, you say you should make it, but it was just a nice accurate pass from the line out maul out to his number 10. I think when he then sent the long pass out. So he's just done everything right today. He's been on the edge of the law, because you've heard the referee speak to him 2 or 3 times, but any good number 7 is always on the edge of the law. And I think that the whole Southern Knights back row has impressed me in the 2 games I've seen them this season, but for me, he was the pick of the bunch today.
I think that's a very valid choice. I'm worried because I picked a loose head prop for the player of the match in the first game, and it's a position now I'm very unfamiliar with. But it's a chance now for Jaco van der Walt to just make the scoreline a little bit more awkward for the hosts. Still 20 points to 24, as you can see. The try bonus with the Knights, but that will matter for little unless they can get over the line with a victory here. And it looks good from this angle. It's looked good for Jaco van der Walt as well, who quickly retreated back to his own half, and now it's 7 points that separate these 2 teams. Heriot's 20, Southern Knights 27, and we've got a minute and a half left on the clock, and this is certainly an intriguing end to this game as Heriots get play back underway. Has been plucked from the skies from the captain, Leishman, just trying to lead from the front, and Gelderbloom finds Linus. And he knows one direction, and that's forward, and he just does that. Now Ross Jones at the hands of Cammy Hutchison, but it's Harris Rutherford who's popped up with the ball. The young fly half doing well to ride the challenges, and it's back at the pocket of van der Walt, who's got some space in backfield, and at least he feels he has, and he's got just that, and it's been bobbled back in field. The referee keeps his flag down, and I thought Aidan Cross was in for a hat-trick, but the delayed
white ball, so it went in.
The delayed flag there from the assistant referee.
Yeah, no, it was taken back in. There was no 50-22. Breakdown was in.
I need to see that again. I'm not entirely sure exactly what happened there.
Breakdown was in this.
I'm not sure the assistant referee was entirely sure for a second.
No, I think you just see the end of that. It looks like the ball has stayed in the field of play. It'll be interesting to see actually, because Leishman looked like he was maybe encroaching on that line. I would have thought it might have been a put into the line out to the Southern Knights, but as it stands, 20 odd seconds left in this game, and it's Heriot who have got to go from deep to try and galvanise themselves and snatch a draw from this fixture. A game where they started as relatively heavy favourites, and it would mean that they would both have a win apiece in the Super 6 Championship. Heriot's winning on the road at the Green Yards a few weeks ago. The referee stopping play. Looks like there's another injury. It looks like it's Patrick Anderson lying on the ground, and the medical staff are quickly across there. And you can hear the referee saying there's 10 seconds left in this game, and do you feel that 10 seconds is enough for Heriots to escape from their own 22 and get a draw in this game?
I think we've seen that in this game that absolutely anything could happen. Before Heriots lost the ball at the other end of the field, I was going to say what money on a draw it would you could almost argue it was a, well, actually no, I was going to say it might be a fair result, but that's not actually true. I think the Southern Knights have been clearly the better side in this second half. It was pretty evenly matched in the first half, but the second they've had the ascendancy. Jaco van der Waal, I think, probably merits a mention. Sorry, because you may feel that he should be named player of the match. There's my choice there with the 7 jersey on his back. I just figure as a professional player, you expect that level of performance from him. So he's not done anything out of the ordinary. I think he's been key to if this does turn out to be a Southern Knights victory. So that was the reason I didn't choose him, but he's been absolutely instrumental in setting this up. But and this is a similar situation to we had at the end of the previous game. That time was almost done. We had an injury to one of I think it was Cole Lamberton, wasn't it? One of the Watsonians' props. But of course you can't just say, well, okay, let's just stop the game. Then it gave Watsonians a chance to get a bonus point try, which they did, and at the end of the day might result in them finishing top of the table. Here you've got to absolutely give Heriots the chance to get themselves somehow down the other end and rescue what might be an unlikely draw. Yeah, well, I must again repeat what we said about Cole Lambert, and we wish Patrick Anderson all the best and hope it's not as serious as it looks, but it's nice to see him sitting upright. Well, he's been really good since he came on. I don't know when they intended bringing him onto the field, but it certainly wasn't after the whatever 3 or 4 minutes when we lost. It was Finn Douglas. But he has been really good, and I still would like to see a replay or have another look at the tackle when I was sure that Heriots were going to score going down this touchline. Is that the one that we're looking at? Maybe it was the other. Yeah, it was this one. In fact, just down this touchline there, and somebody appeared across and made a last gasp tackle, and I think it was Patrick Anderson. As I said earlier, he's such a good defender, but he's actually been a real force on attack. He carries hard. He's not a big guy, but he carries very well, and he set up the try for David Colvin as he broke outside his opposite number, and as he was tackled went to deck, had the presence of mind to pop the ball up to the onrushing David Colvin, who was in support, and that was really what took the game away from Heriots and extended the lead out to 24 points to 13. That Jack Blaine try gave Heriots a sniff of a chance of getting back into it. Has that Van der Waal penalty been the well, I don't know. I'm still not going to guess with the clock going into the red at the end. Yeah. Who on earth is going to win this one? I think if the game before us told us that anything could happen, and this has been one of the more exciting games, or one of the most exciting games. They've all been quality matchups, but 12, this has certainly been one that's kept you on the edge of your seat. But the nudge coming on there from the Southern Knights.
No, leave it.
Looking to try and see where the ball is, but Wallace Nelson, the FOSROC Super 6 player of the match, has still got his part to play in this, because you can hear the referee just screaming, no 7. And he's went and got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and the referee's awarded a penalty, which means that Heriots can kick downfield, the ball can cross the touch line, and play can resume. It's going to be a throw into the line out to Heriots. Well, the Knights' scrum has been under pressure for most of this game, but they got a real nudge on there, and I think Wallace Nelson just got a little bit overexcited. He thought he could turn that one over.
but was penalised, and you see that just allows Heriot to get cheap territory down to around about halfway, and one last chance. The best they can hope for here is a draw.
Michael Linus, the throw into the line out. He finds his captain Leishman. It's been brought down in the wrap round for Jed Gelderblom. He finds Jones in midfield, and Davidson now looking to break free over the 10-metre line. Gelderblom again finds Jones, who distributes to the tower, and Jack Blaine, who got the
tackle.
Only try for Heriot in the second half so far. Now Gelderblom again finding Dan Gamble running back in towards traffic, but he's been met with again some very good defence, and it's been an asset for the Knights throughout this game, which is slightly ironic because they have conceded 20 points, but they still lead by 7. Now Leishman down the far side, puts boot to ball, looking to try and make it a foot race, but it's dribbled off of the field of play, and you can see the captain disappointed with his decision. I think he knows he's perhaps made an error of judgment there and looking to kick downfield, but I think there's certainly going to be 23 jubilant Southern Knights players, because one of the most unlikeliest of victories this weekend does go the way of the Southern Knights, and it finishes here at Goldenacre. Heriot's Rugby 20, the Southern Knights 27, and we can all kind of draw breath now, but it was a brilliant game. But Leishman, perhaps he's not a man who makes many mistakes, but perhaps at the end maybe guilty of a little bit of a lapse of judgment there.
You see that so often in the last 2 or 3 minutes of games as well. Players happy to kick it away, and it amazes me. You know, they just don't keep ball in hand. He was certainly not going to score there, but just set up a ruck, recycle the ball, and play away from that against a fast retreating Southern Knights defence. And as you say, you saw from his reaction, head to hands, he realised instantly that he had taken the wrong option there. So a disappointing way for the game to finish for Heriot, but I have to say they would not have deserved it if they'd gone the other end and secured an unlikely draw. The Southern Knights would have been very hard done by. Yeah,
Heriots were guilty of it against Boroughmuir here a couple of weeks ago, when they controlled the first half and they got themselves into a good position and then let the team back into it, and you would say that they've perhaps been guilty of that yet again, because the Southern Knights were able to score 20 points in the second half and leave Goldenacre with the victory. And it was Heriot who got off to a great start through a try from Ian Wilson, who managed to sneak his way over, but Southern Knights struck back, patient build up, and you know, this was a kind of common theme for the Southern Knights throughout this game, because they were very composed in possession, and they did ask questions of Heriot.
Yes, patient here. We didn't see the phases they went through in the build-up. We just see the last 2, but from memory they went through 6 or 7 phases to get to this stage, and just kept going round the corner. But from this one, you just see the pass when they shifted play just a little bit wider. You can see Wilson set up there, made the tackle. They're expecting Heriot's expect them just to go around the corner again. A bit of movement there in the Heriot's defence, and just the pass just a little bit wider. And it's always hard to stop big bodies like Otterak from half a yard out.
Yeah, definitely, and it was looking good for the Southern Knights, who were controlling the game, but the next attacking opportunity that Heriot's got, they pounced upon, and it was the captain. That was perhaps the good of his game there. You can see Murdo McAndrew just trying to splinter off the side, but a good finish from Leishman.
Yeah, it was good. That came from a penalty from the Southern Knights. Patrick Anderson sticking his hands in a ruck. They kicked to the corner, couldn't score from the line out, but a few phases later the captain does go over, and at that stage at half time we said that it was anybody's game.
Yeah, it was a bit nit-tuck in the first half, and then the second half was littered with tries. We had a couple of brilliant tries from Aidan Cross. We had a try from Jack Blaine as well to add to that, and then David Colvin getting a really good try as well. And I would imagine when you're looking at social media this week, I think there'll be a few Southern Knights tries in there for try of the weekend, certainly. And we'll get a chance to look at the action here, and this was one of them. Jaco van der Walt just feigning for the pass, kicking across the field, and it was Aidan Cross here who managed just to scamper in and just evade Jake Hendry. I think that angle of run, feigning to go back in field, perhaps check the winger, and he was able to beat him to the corner.
It was the disguise by Jaco van der Walt. You can see him, he's looking along his back line. Everything he does suggests he's going to give the ball, he's going to pass the ball, and he just waited and waited. He pulled the Heriot's defence up, and then There you see, just puts boot the ball, weighted it perfectly, and out to Aidan Cross. But he stumbled there, and it just allowed Henry to get across. But see, he dives about, 5 metres early, so there was no chance that Henry was ever going to stop that.
And Jaco van der Walt was instrumental in the second one as well for Aidan Cross, as he spills the ball from his hands this time instead of kicking it cross field, and it was great finishing from the winger. A very similar position, but he was able to show a good mixture of pace and power to squeeze in the corner.
That was just sheer gas. He's still a huge amount to do, and he only had one thing in his mind, outside Dan King, Henry coming across and the ball in one hand and touches it down. But that was really accurate play from everybody involved for the Southern Knights.
Yeah, this was the next drive for the Knights. They got a bit of daylight between the two teams, and it was David Colvin who went in for the score, but a good patient build-up and good interlinking play from the Knights.
Yeah, really good. Well, we'll come back to that. I mean, it was just the offload off the ground by Anderson to Colvin. It was great, but back came Heriot.
Yeah, and it was Jack Blaine who got the final score for Heriot, just powering over as easy as you like for the giant winger. And I think we're perhaps in a minute going to be able to see your pick of FOSROC player of the match, but there were certainly a few players to select from. Aidan Cross, 2 tries, and obviously your pick was Wallace Nelson in the back row. The open side flanker had a really, really good game, and it helped constitute to that scoreline that you can see in your screen there, a very narrow but a well-deserved Southern Knight victory. There
were some really good performances in that Southern Knights team. You mentioned Aidan Cross, who might feel hard done by getting two tries. If he got a hat-trick, which he went close, he had a couple of opportunities I might have had to give it to him. Jaco van der Walt, people might think that he was the key in there that unlocked that Heriot's defence, but as I said at the time, he's a professional player and you expect that of him. Where I thought Wallace Nelson really rose to the occasion. Sam Derrick, maybe a little bit quieter than he was last time out against Watsonians. Rudy Brown, he's just so willing as a ball carrier. But I just thought the overall game of Wallace Nelson was superb.
I think we're going to get a chance to see the man of the match get presented with his medal. Certainly a well-deserved. I've been impressed with Wallace Nelson. I think he's always been there or thereabouts in terms of being one of the better players on the field, but the captain there, Harry Morris, just putting the medal round your FOSROC Super 6 player of the match, Wallace Nelson, and he's certainly been the standout player in this afternoon's victory.
And Harry Morris is captain. Another player with a bright future ahead of him. And we spoke about the difficulties, and particularly the line out. I think on most occasions it's not particularly the hooker's fault. I think I'm not going to go off on one. It could take me 5 minutes to explain it. I just think it's an area they need to look at, because I think the natural thing to do is to blame the hooker, but actually it's what's going on in the line out that's just not quite right for the Southern Knights. They had the same issues last week, but in the open, Harry Morris, you said, I think it was a hybrid, the term that you used, reminds me of, was it Gregor Hiddleston up at Stirling Wolves, likewise equally comfortable in the back row, and at hooker. Harry Morris has played back row and hooker for the Southern Knights this season, but very, very capable player as well. There's some we're maybe a bit hard on the Knights at the start, but they've good performance today. Yeah,
another similar player who was a back row and moved into hooker is currently on the Southern Knights coaching staff, a one Ross Ford. So he's certainly got good guidance there, and it's obviously had an impact on the table. This weekend's fixtures have had certainly a big impact. Ayrshire Bulls got us underway on Friday night at Millbrae with a very impressive 26-0 win over Stirling Wolves. I think the most impressive part of that is the 0, which is against the Stirling Wolves name. And then Watsonians Rugby, they put in a second half fight back against the Boroughmuir Bears at Meggetland earlier on this afternoon after a game which they were trailing at half time, and it was a similar fashion in this game as well, because we did say we did not think Southern Knights were going to score 27 points, and they've done exactly that, and they've went away back down to the Green Yards with a 27 points to 20 victory, and it's been a brilliant 2 games this afternoon actually, but certainly the last one has been probably the pick of the bunch.
It has, yeah, certainly the most open and exciting. I'm just wondering why the Ayrshire Bulls didn't score 27 points instead of 26.
Yeah, it would have made things a little bit easier for us, but it's certainly had this impact on the table. Heriot's still trail Boroughmuir Bears by 5 points in the table, so they've got a big task if they want to get that third position in the table. Obviously the top 4 teams meeting next weekend, and it's a big game for the Southern Knights. They've put a bit of daylight in between themselves and the Wolves, but it's Southern Knights versus Stirling Wolves is the last fixture for them in round 10 of the FOSROC Super 6. The Ayrshire Bulls have to travel to Boroughmuir. As you can see here, the fixtures on the Friday night, it gets off underway with another capital battle between Watsonians and Heriots. And then on Saturday, the first fixture at 1 p.m. will be Southern Knights versus the Stirling Wolves. And then the Boroughmuir Bears welcome the Ayrshire Bulls to Meggetland. And that will bring proceedings to a close. It's certainly, you know, you would say now that most of the positions in the table are pretty much done. There's about 5 points between them all. It's only the top 2 places that can perhaps really change.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we can stick the table back up again, but I think, well, as you say, we know that, there we go, we know the top 2. So we've got one plays 4 and 2 plays 3. Both Watsonians Rugby and Ayrshire Bulls will have home advantage. So, and because the Watsonians now have that 2 points advantage again at the top, it can't come down to bonus points. Assuming they both win, that will be the top 2. And likewise, we know Boroughmuir Bears and Heriots will finish in that order. So Watsonians would play Heriots, and Ayrshire Bulls would play Boroughmuir Bears. Now, before the start of today, we spoke about that. Let's say that Watsonians Rugby sitting at the top, they're the best team in the league, which I would say they just about are, still have that edge over Ayrshire Bulls. However, would you rather go, if you're an Edinburgh team, Boroughmuir or Heriots, would you rather drive for 15 minutes and go to Myerside and fancy an upset there, or would you want to go all the way through to Millbrae and try and beat Ayrshire Bulls at home? And I suspect Heriots, although be disappointed in today's result, they might go, well, okay, if we're going to have to, you know, it's the best of the two bad options if we have to kind of drive to Watsonians for that semi-final. So, if anything, if they can take anything from that, it's a long-winded explanation of why actually Heriots are maybe not too upset if they finish 4th.
Well, yeah, I think between Heriots and Boroughmuir, it's like picking which member of Jedward you want to be stuck in a lift with, because it's it's not an easy task for either side, because they have to defeat one of the top 2 sides if they're going to make it to the Dam Health. And the Southern Knights against the Stirling Wolves next weekend again will decide who's going to finish at the bottom. But there's certainly, you know, in terms of the league positions, it looks like most things are settled and we know the landscape we're going to be heading into for the playoffs, but there's still so much to play for in this FOSROC Super 6 Championship. But in the final game of round 9, it is the Southern Knights who escape with a victory as it finishes Heriots Rugby 20, the Southern Knights 27.